really interesting example, because you could say, well, look, hold on a minute, why would they possibly hike interest rates when you've got their biggest trading partner in having cut interest rates this year, the Eurozone, of course, where we have growth arguably slipping in Sweden? Why would they hike interest rates now? And one of their big concerns, and they're quite candid about it, is that they are concerned about the level of household debt. Now, asset price inflation, like in many countries since the global financial crisis, has been strong. House prices have gone up quite a lot. And as individuals have to chase house prices better to get on that property, or chase house prices higher to get on that property ladder, they've ended up with a large amount of disposable debt as a percentage of disposable income. And that's the case in many countries, Australia, New Zealand, various countries around the globe, Canada, another one. So that is a big concern, and it seems that the pushback against negative yields really is spreading. We've seen more conversation in Japan, in the Eurozone, and this is part of what's informing the RBA's decision, and probably one of the reasons why the RBA have said, look, we're not going to cut interest rates beyond Q5, we'll do quantitative easing instead.
Very good. Jane Foley with us, informing us with good conversation. Leslie Vinjer-Murray before this special edition of Bloomberg Surveillance, as John Farrow and I in New York await an important discussion of the Chancellor of Germany and the President of the United States. John, I believe the President will have other bilaterals, and I believe even with them being so far behind their schedule, he has a separate press conference at this point scheduled later in the New York afternoon.
So the day is already running a little bit later than it's meant to.
What do you think we're behind? I think we're behind like a solid half hour on the schedule.
It's more than that now. It's more than that now. It's more than 40
minutes.
But we
welcome all of you. Jane Foley still with us with Rabobank, giving us wonderful perspective on the litmus paper of the system. We thank her for her appearance here today as well. John and I are looking at a set of news flow. We haven't talked much about impeachment as well. John, I would point out that this impeachment committee hearing today is original. We actually have people that know what they're talking about. 4 law professors, Jonathan Turley in the Washington Examiner, writing up with a really piercing essay about the narrowness of this impeachment proceeding historically. He's not pro-Trump, but he certainly tilts towards a more Republican bent. And Noah Feldman, who writes for Bloomberg Opinion, has been of huge value to me with his history of the Supreme Court. Dr. Feldman will be there as well.
I haven't heard a decent argument yet as to why this is not a lose-lose situation for the Democrats at the moment. How do they come out looking good from all of this, and looking good with the electorate? Because in the court of public opinion, that's what matters here. And over the last month or so, it's not clear to me in the polls that they're bringing the court of public opinion along with them.
I don't disagree with that, but I would suggest there are different electorates out there. And from day one here, and Speaker Pelosi fighting the process the entire way, Speaker Pelosi, it was finally caved in, if you will, and they're speaking to a certain electorate riveted by this. And John, to your point, and Jim Glassman on Jobs Day mentioned this in his travels for J.P. Morgan, there's a huge part of the country where it's like, okay, what do you have, John?
ADP report coming out in about 5 or 6
I missed
minutes' time. Please say that Jane Foley of Rabobank is still with us. So, Jane, let's talk about it. Labour market data coming up through the week. Tomorrow, initial jobless claims, the payrolls report is coming up on Friday. So, Jane, what are your thoughts? What are you looking for in the jobs numbers in America?
Well, I think this is going to be a fascinating one because, of course, this week we haven't had particularly good data from the manufacturing sector. And the question is, is this weakness in the manufacturing sector, is it pushing into, or will it push into the labour market? And if that's the case, I do think that the market will begin to take a different view on the Federal Reserve, begin to be worried about the Powell's glass half full outlook on the U.S. economy. So I think the payrolls number, if it is weaker than expected, if there are signs that there is softening there, I think that will be quite a nasty signal.
Jane, I look at the Fed and I look at the meeting to December, and then there's a January 29 meeting. I mean, I think I'm guilty of this. The media focuses on the next event, obviously. Are you focused on December 11 as the be-all, end-all, or is it much more into the meetings of 2020?
I think it's really the meetings of 2020, but I think we all need to watch very carefully the rhetoric, watch the guidance, watch out for any shifts, and therefore it is going to be, I think, all about 2020. But I don't think that we can overlook any of the meetings that are coming up. I think they could all provide quite interesting clues potentially.
hugely valuable. Jane Foley, thank you so much for joining us on the desk of Rabobank in London. Terrific news flow this morning. Let's listen to Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much, John. NATO meetings continue outside London. President Trump arrived and posed for a quick photo op and exchanged pleasantries with British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and NATO Secretary Jens Stoltenberg.
Are you choking up over the Panthers?
He's just trying to work things out as the Panthers lose their coach.
The Panthers lose their coach.
Mr. Tepper putting his stamp on the football side of things.
You okay over there? We're going to get through this, folks.
We've got to get Michael Barr.
You've got the plague. Lisa has a plague. Barr has a plague.
I'm hoping Lisa's going to be back with us tomorrow. She's going to come back tomorrow. Is this the Christmas plague?
It's a Christmas plague. It's a surveillance plague.
Is that what this is? Michael Barr, are you okay?
I'll be okay.
Have we got you back? I think we've got to give Michael Barr.
We're going to give him some time.
Michael Barr's going to go away.
I'm thinking December 15th. Okay, Michael.
Do you have that bar trolley that you used to have?
I do
on
have
your
it.
desk? Do you still have?
Yeah, I have it there.
Maybe got scotch on it.
No, we have the scotch on there. Maybe
Matt Miller used to have one of them with scotch.
Oh, we got scotch.
We know Matt Miller did.
We've got to get him some scotch.
Well, let me do a data check right now as Mr. Barr recoups here for an important news flow. There's the vodka. Thank you so much, Rich, for bringing in the good stuff. Futures up 15. Dow futures up 153. The VIX 15.10. And the curve dynamics have been good, John, which really gets to the real yield as you shape it up for Friday and into next week as well. The curve has been a little out of sorts, right?
Well, let's talk about the Treasury curve, because the Treasury curve really steepened up over a period of time. There's a big jump earlier this week, and then all of a sudden just came crashing back down again. The whole curve, though, Tom, is below, out to 10 years, is basically below the Fed funds rate. If you think about where the Fed funds rate is right now and the upper bound of the Fed funds target rate, the upper bound is what? 175? What are we now on a 10-year? 174?
And where are the dots? You go right to the heart of the matter, where the only guidepost we have is the adjustment out 2 and 3 years. I've been watching inflation expectations as well. And folks, the chart I have, I'll get it out on Twitter today. You'll see it first on Bloomberg Radio. Inflation expectations in London are sort of kind of like there. In the United States, they're churning in a little bit disinflationary, but it is stunning still, the disinflationary tendency in Europe. And you see that here as we go into the settings, including Lagarde, December, 12, I think we see Madame Lagarde.
Her first big news conference at the ECB. A lot going on in a small amount of time. And I just think it's fascinating. The last couple of days, Tom, spoke to Steve Englander of Standard Chartered. He just got back from Europe. Said the Fed did not come up in conversations with him in any way, shape or form in meetings across Europe. He said it was the first time that it happened in a long, long time. The Fed is not featuring. Maybe that's mission accomplished for Chairman Powell at the moment, that the Fed isn't a big part of the story right now. I think there's some people believe, including Jim Bianco of Bianco Research, that one punch in the face by the market and the Fed's back in play, Tom.
Well, very good. We are very close to going to the Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, Angela Merkel. 14 years of duty and great speculation about the future of the Chancellor and his party, and of course the President of the United States. The flags have been changed as they do, the German flag in yellow, red, and black, and of course the American flag in a more confined, less opulent meeting room here than what we saw with Mr. Macron yesterday as well. We're trying to link up the audio now to the imagery. So here we go. Here is the President of the United States.
Ich denke ja, wir haben ein sehr erfolgreiches Treffen gehabt zu 70 Jahren.
And as Chancellor Merkel's in German. John, how's your German this morning?
Not good enough to translate this to you live. What happens here, as you're quite aware, Tom, is you get the opening remarks, first from the Chancellor Angela Merkel, then the President of the United States will weigh in as well. Then we'll get a bit of back and forth as we did yesterday with the Mr. Emmanuel Macron. And of course, the bilateral continues. I believe we've got a little bit of a translation at the moment.
It was a very constructive debate that we had, and this is why I'm also very satisfied with the meeting.
Und jetzt besprechen wir die bilateralen Dinge.
And now we shall talk about bilateral issues.
That's right. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. the Erdogan meeting, sir?
Yeah, we had a meeting with...
Did you discuss with him the NATO...
I discussed with him everything. We discussed a lot. We had a meeting unscheduled, but we've already put out a notice. It was a very good meeting, I think. We discussed Syria. We discussed the Kurds. We discussed numerous things, and we're getting along very well. The border and the safe zone is working out very well. And I give a lot of credit to Turkey for that. The ceasefire is holding very much so, and I think people are surprised. And maybe someday they'll give me credit, but probably not. But it worked out well. They've been trying to do this for 100 years. That border is a mess for a long time. We pulled our soldiers out. We took over the oil. We have soldiers where the oil is. That's the way I like it. And they can police their own border, and that's what they're doing. They can use other countries if they want. If they want to spend the time and energy, they can do. But this is a border that's been under siege for many, many decades. And it was time for us to leave, and we left, and it's been holding very nicely, so we're very happy. We talked about that.
And are they committed to protecting the NATO commitment to protect the Baltics and Poland?
Oh, yeah, they've been very good. I think that, frankly, a lot of people paid great respect to Turkey for the work that they've done, and we had a number of mentions where they were mentioned specifically. Now, they've been doing a good job, and they've been doing a good job also on the border and the safe zone, and they have held. I mean, obviously there were some skirmishes. That's been around for a long time, but the ceasefire has held very, very well.
Mr. President, can you explain why your personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, would need to talk to the Budget Office?
I really don't know yet. I have to ask him. Sounds like something that's not so complicated. You'd have to ask him. No big deal.
Mr. President, Germany has welcomed 6 more countries into INSPEX, making it 9 countries now that are circumventing U.S. sanctions against Iran. Have you talked about that with the Chancellor?
No, but we will.
Yeah. What would you say?
I haven't. I'm not going to say what I'm going to say, but we will be talking about it. We'll be talking about a number of things. We'll have a good meeting. Okay?
Mr. President, will you put sanctions on Nord Stream 2? Will the U.S. put sanctions?
Say it again?
Will the U.S. put sanctions on Nord Stream 2?
Well, we haven't really determined that yet. I do think it's a problem, but it's a problem that Germany's going to have to work out for themselves. Maybe for Germany it won't be a problem. I hope it's not, actually, but we'll be talking about that. Nord Stream.
Mr. President, what did you respond to President Putin's offer on a moratorium for medium-range missile systems, which we made in the end of October?
We're talking to Russia about many things, including a cessation on nuclear and nuclear creation. It's, in my opinion, the biggest problem the world has today. I think it's bigger than any other problem the world has today, and we're working very hard on it. And he wants to see something happen, and so do I, and so does China.
Mr. President, do you talk about trade issues with Europe as well?
We're going to be talking about everything. Yeah, trade is very important. Germany is a very big trading partner, but it's been really the European Union, and we've been discussing it for quite a while. It's been a little tough for the United States. We've had a very bad imbalance for many, many years, for decades actually, and we're discussing that right now. So I think we'll come. I think we're going to come. I think we'll come to a satisfactory conclusion.
One word. Ich denke, dass durch die Arbeitsaufnahme der neuen Kommission und auch der neuen Kommissionspräsidentin wir auch einen guten Punkt haben, mit den Handelsgesprächen wieder voranzukommen.
I think that the fact that there is a new commission in place and also under the leadership of a new president of the European Commission, that now we have a very good basis to resume our trade talks.
Meetings have been set up, and we'll talk, and I believe that it will work out very well for everybody, and I think it should. We have some very tough barriers to get over. They've created barriers, as Angela knows very well, and making it very hard for the United States really to openly trade, and that can't be done. And so we're going to be talking about that and other things. I think we will solve it. We do a lot of business, but they do much more business than us, and we're going to change it. I've been saying this for the last 6 months, for the last year. And we've made progress, but we will make a lot of progress. And we just want fairness. We have to have fairness in trade, and not only with the EU, but with many other countries. We're talking to China, as you know. Those discussions are going very well, and we'll see what happens. But we're talking to China. We're talking to others. We made a deal with South Korea. We made a deal with Japan. The Japan deal is a partial deal. The rest will come next year. But we've made already many deals. We're looking, the big deal is the USMCA with Canada, Mexico. And Nancy Pelosi has to get that approved. She has to put it out for a vote. She doesn't have to talk to anybody. She doesn't have to talk to any of her Democrats because they'll approve it. And their constituents want it approved very badly. So that's where we are. We've made a lot of deals. And this is a deal I think that's going to be... the EU is actually one of the more difficult deals we have because it's gone on for a long time unchecked. But it'll get there, I'm sure.
Have you had a video of Prime Minister Trudeau talking about you last night?
Well, he's two-faced.
Do you think that Germany is too naive?
And honestly, with Trudeau, he's a nice guy. I find him to be a very nice guy. But, you know, the truth is that I called him out on the fact that he's not paying 2%. And I guess he's not very happy about it. I mean, you were there, a couple of you were there, and he's not paying 2%, and he should be paying 2%. It's Canada, they have money, and they should be paying 2%. So I called him out on that, and I'm sure he wasn't happy about it, but that's the way it is. Look, I'm representing the U.S., and he should be paying more than he's paying, and he understands that. So I can imagine he's not that happy, but that's the way it is.
Mr. President, where are you in terms of persuading other allies in terms of allowing China to build 5G networks?
Well, I'm not working very hard on that, but I do think it's a security risk. It's a security danger, and I spoke to Italy, and they look like they're not going to go forward with that. We spoke to other countries. They're not going to go forward. Everybody I've spoken to is not going forward. But how many countries can I speak to? Am I going to call up and speak to the whole world? It is a security risk, in my opinion, in our opinion. We're building it, and we've started, but we're not using Huawei.
Will you tax Germany for not paying enough in terms of defense spending?
Well, Germany's a little bit under the limit, I will say that, but we'll talk about that now. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. I think what we'll do, just for purposes of this, we'll be having a meeting with the 2% people, and we're having another meeting with Denmark, and then we'll probably go directly back to Washington.
Will you address Greenland?
Because I can't imagine. Will we discuss Greenland? What do you think? Tell me. Huh?
You still want to buy
That's a good... She must be in the real estate business. Anyway, that's a very good question. So we'll go directly back. I think we've done plenty of press conferences. Unless you're demanding a press conference, we'll do one. But I think we've answered plenty of questions. And again, let me just finish by saying we've had a tremendous 2 days. I think NATO is stronger than it's ever been. A lot more money is being produced by a lot of countries, and they're enthusiastic about it. And within 3 years, you're going to be talking about committed to $400 billion more. And not by the United States, by other countries. So it's been very successful today, and there's great spirit. Okay? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
The President of the United States with Chancellor Merkel of Germany. John, let me unpack that and help me if I got it wrong. I thought really terse comments on Mr. Trudeau as well. You saw that press conference yesterday.
I actually think he was really reserved this time around.
Yeah.
He called out Germany by name yesterday and said that if Germany didn't meet 2% of GDP in terms of military spending, he'd give them the tariff treatment.
Yeah.
He avoided that comment today. In fact, he was asked directly about it in that brief little news conference with journalists there, and he avoided it. It was also interesting that he went in hard on Canada. Canada's military spending is below 2% of GDP. It's in at around 1.3% of GDP. But he took a softer tone on Germany. Germany is not that far away from Canada on military spending. It's just below 1.5%.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how he navigates that behind closed doors, which is a meeting that's taking place now.
And we'll see that. And, of course, he adjusts the schedule as well. And what we saw with the schedule is, if I get this right, and help me here with the jokes about Greenland and Denmark, there'll be a bilateral with Denmark. I don't believe he mentioned Italy, which I saw on his schedule earlier this morning. And then he alluded that he would go straight back to Washington and avoid a schedule scheduled Trump-only press conference, and we'll have to get more data on that as well. They have certainly been informative and entertaining as well. What we would like to do now is inform on the American economy. And John, help me here. The first jobs report, of course, will go beneath the headline numbers on Friday. It is Wednesday, and that was an ADP report that was selfish.
Big downside surprise.
Yeah.
Coming in at 67,000. Slight downward revision to the previous month as well. Median estimate was 135. So this is the appetizer for the payrolls report coming out on Friday, Tom. And it comes in really, really soft. As always, we do this every month. What's the read across from ADP to NFP? And we can have that debate. But when you take the data this week, the ISM just south of expectations, below 50. You put it together with the ADP. Might just be a little bit of nervousness out there still, Tom.
Someone expert on this, truly expert, really quite good at the granularity of these data points. Francis Donald of Manulife. Francis, wonderful to have you here. A perfect time. Do you correlate ADP on a Wednesday over to a jobs day on Friday?
Yeah, we, like everybody else, are always paying attention, but mostly now because we have some concerns that while the manufacturing recession appears like it's bottomed, there is still this lingering issue of whether the manufacturing issues that we've seen globally will filter through into the services and jobs economy. And when I start to see a number that is missing by this extent, even if it's what we call a secondary or tertiary data point, it does flow into our concerns that jobs momentum is going to slow over the course of 2020. Are we going to see a rise in unemployment that's consistent with recessions? Probably not. But this narrative of everything's fine in the U.S. because the consumer is so strong is probably going to be increasingly tested.
To your wonderful charts at Manulife, I guess we're all in belief of a V-shaped bottom. Can't we have an L bottom where, we don't get worse in manufacturing, but we just slog along?
Well, exactly. I like to call it an L-shaped recovery. I think John actually in the past said, is an L-shaped recovery really a recovery to me? And that's very fair.
That was the existential pharaoh. Continue.
So that's exactly the shape of the recovery that we're looking for, is much more of a stabilization than a 2017 type of environment. And that's because we don't have a China stimulus coming through to the same extent. We still have the structural pressures coming down from trade tensions, and that consumer is really looking end cycle. That doesn't mean a disintegration of the consumer, but it means that we have to be expecting a slower consumer profile over the course of 2020. That's going to make it very difficult for us to see, greater than 2% GDP numbers next year. For me, it's a one handle.
Francis, it's always great to catch up with you. There's some great analysis to really get our heads around going into 2020. So let's talk about capital allocation decisions off the back of that analysis. What are the guys, what are the team, including yourself and Manulife, thinking about in terms of those decisions going into next year?
So from our perspective, this is still an environment that's consistent with a mild to moderate overweight for risk. A lot of that is actually coming from Fed messaging and a Federal Reserve that has told us maybe they're done cutting rates, but they won't be hiking rates for an extended period of time, at least not till they say really significant inflation. We do not see inflation in this outlook. We do not see greater than 2% for a multi-year period. And in that environment where growth can kind of bottom along, come up around 2%, low inflation, no fear of higher rates, that is a sweet spot for equities and a really good place to be.
Is it a sweet spot for the Fed?
One of my bigger concerns for the Fed at this point is they've sent this messaging that they're through and done, but we are still headed into a period, particularly Q1, where there are downside risks. And from my perspective, one of the biggest risks out there, particularly for equity markets, is that we have a Fed that is too slow to respond in the event that we hit one of these tail risks. Let's say a very sharp deterioration in job markets or another round of tariffs that pushes down the consumer. We still need a Fed that maintains that Fed put, or else the market may get a little bit concerned that we're going to go back to that era of a Fed that is too slow. And if we do have a Fed that is too slow to respond or doesn't appear open to further cuts, my concern is future cuts will actually be risk off and not risk on.
Well, Francis, let's explore this further. I think 2019 has been really interesting. You could have got the macro call right and then the market call really wrong. The macro call essentially being global growth slow down, resilient consumer, but the market performance has come from places that are dependent on the macro story being really quite bright, being positive. Places like Germany, the DAX still performed with a really decent gain for 19. The secret to this year was getting the policy right from the ECB, from the Federal Reserve, and understanding what the policy response would be. How important is the policy response going to be for markets going into next year at a time when hardly anybody is talking about the Fed anymore?
That's a really great point. And I just saw one ECB preview popped up, and I thought, oh, right, the ECB again. We should probably be talking about their implications and moving back towards the concept of how much easing is being provided. My focus is on what the balance sheet means for equity markets, what it means for the U.S. dollar. This 40% retracement in the tightening or the tapering of that balance sheet, to me, is a very significant policy move that is generally being downplayed. I think there is far too much focus on the possibility of fiscal spending being the 2020 savior. Of course, we're seeing an almost coordinated commentary from central banks telling us fiscal is the next push. But the realism of that actually occurring in the next 2 to 3 quarters is something that concerns me great a bit.
This is important. Continue this further. So what is the ECB doing with its balance sheet that our listeners in America need to know?
Well, global central banks are now re-expanding their balance sheet so that we've moved from policy tightening on the balance sheet towards policy expansion.
Is it QE whatever?
It's QE forever, QE infinity. We have all sorts of synonyms for it. But the perception here, or our perception, is that we had central banks that attempted to normalize policy via both interest rates and the balance sheet, and they effectively failed. So when we're thinking out over a 5-year asset allocation decision, our concern is we don't see them capable of normalizing again in this low inflation, low growth environment. That keeps the interest rates very low. It keeps the curve very flat over an extended period of time.
Francis, does it matter what they buy for risk assets? They keep telling us that it's not QE, that they're focused on T-bills. This isn't the same. That's the message. It's the Federal Reserve downplaying the operation. For markets, does it matter what they're purchasing, or does it just matter that the balance sheet is moving one way rather than the other?
Yeah, there's some minutia that suggests that what they buy is important, but if you take a look at the recent FOMC minutes, they actually acknowledge that there is some favor to steepening the curve, and that this QE that they're engaged in, or sorry, not QE that they're engaged in, is keeping the front end lower. So there is some sort of tacit, implied recognition that their balance sheet expansion in the United States is helping the curve stay a little bit less flat. And to me, that's significant. And this manipulation of the market, or perhaps a better word is the effect of this QE on the market, is non-negligible. So we can call it whatever we want, but there's clearly distortions in our market that exists that wouldn't exist if the Fed was not doing this.
Then summarize this conversation to a 12-month forward Manulife call on American economic growth. Can you get out over 2%, or even, dare I say, above 2.3% given this manipulation?
I don't think so. I think we're in a 2% world, 2% inflation, 2% yields, 2% growth, and a very flat curve over that period. But guess what? That's pretty good. Nice Goldilocks environment for risk and equities in general. It also suggests if you want carry, if you want more return, you have to be looking outside the U.S.
Where outside the U.S.? I mean, this has been a huge topic on surveillance this morning. Is it outside the U.S., larger developed outside the U.S. markets, or do you actually go EM to find yield?
Well, we're spending a lot of time thinking about Europe and some of the inflection points that we're seeing in both the soft and hard data, but an ongoing long-term trade for us is that EM debt perspective. The likelihood that we see lower interest rates there, that we continue to see a search for yield going into an under-owned asset class. To me, EM debt remains one of the best structural plays, one that I absolutely want in my portfolio at all times.
This has been brilliant.
Thanks,
Perfect
Francis.
Walkthrough, particularly off the shocking ADP report. Francis Donald is with Manulife. And John, I believe that was in a decade second lowest statistic ever.
67,000, big downside surprise on the ADP report. The median estimate 135 in our Bloomberg survey. As we get you set up for payrolls Friday, going into Friday, this is your non-farm payrolls estimate coming out the back of our Bloomberg survey so far. Obviously, moving target, could move again over the coming days, but at the moment, 190,000.
That's a long way from a 67 framework.
Looking for a really decent number off the 128K we got in the month of October. So the November payrolls report just around the corner. The median estimate 190, Tom, following a big downside surprise on the ADP report.
Yeah, it's interesting. CIBC World Markets obviously takes the correlation there. Andrew Grantham over to negative for the dollar. We see dollar weakness. Sterling with a 131 print. There it is, 131.00 on sterling. I mean, you're looking, when we go over there, are you looking at that 3-bedroom thing in Mayfair?
I'm not looking at any property now at 131 and funded in dollars. I mean, maybe if we were getting back down to 120, I'd look at doing a little bit of a crowdfunding effort and try and buy a garage in Knightsbridge or something.
Have you ever done the thing,
or a parking space?
Have you ever done out in the fields where you grew up, where you go look for buried treasure in England?
I used to do that as a kid. You go and look for Roman coins.
Done that. You go look for Roman coins.
Well, you wouldn't look for Roman coins in America, would you? For obvious reasons. I'm not sure the Empire ever got over here, did it?
No, I don't think
that might be why you weren't looking for
Mostly
Roman coins.
What we do is we're looking at the beach for Tiffany bracelets. John, we're at the beach looking for Tiffany bracelets.
Is that how you're spending the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I got a medical report here in surveillance. For those of you that have been with us through the day, Michael Barr, under the weather. And
is he feeling better now?
Rallied.
Yes, we got to see if we can hit the reset.
The vodka works.
That special juice, that vodka, that'll address everything.
Futures up 12, Dow futures up 125. He's always rock solid. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Now for the news from New York City, here is Michael Barr.
John, Tom, thank you very much. As President Trump meets for a second day in London with fellow NATO leaders, the House Judiciary Committee today holds its first impeachment hearing. Yesterday, the House Intelligence Committee released their report accusing the president of orchestrating a pressure campaign to get Ukraine to investigate the Bidens. Republican Congressman Devin Nunes of California has filed a lawsuit against CNN seeking more than $435 million in damages. Nunes claims that the outlet defamed him last month when it published a demonstrably false hit piece. The November 22nd story reported that while serving as a chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Nunes traveled to Vienna to meet with Ukraine's former prosecutor general to discuss digging up dirt on Joe Biden. Senator Kamala Harris has dropped out of the 2020 presidential race, citing a lack of finances. A curt exchange after President Trump tweeted, "Too bad, we will miss you, Kamala," to which Harris responded, "Don't worry, Mr. President, I'll see you at your trial." Mexico is considering a U.S. proposal to remove protections for biologic drugs from a renegotiated NAFTA trade deal. The plan that could help clear a hurdle to an agreement and deal a blow to brand-name pharmaceutical companies is being looked at. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom.
Thanks so much, Michael Barr. Time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Report. Here's John Stashauer.
Tom, 26 games into the NHL season, the Devils decided they had seen enough under coach John Hines. Only 9 wins, weekend losses to the Rangers and Sabres by a combined score of 11-1. Hines was in his 5th season. Only once did he get the Devils to the playoffs. The new coach, at least on an interim basis, Elaine Nastradine, who had been Hines' assistant.
Obviously, a lot of emotions. Just found out a couple hours ago, so a lot goes through your mind. Can't help but think about John and the relationship we've had the last 10 years, and those are not great circumstances. It is an opportunity, but it's going to take time to settle in. But we have a game to win tonight, so that's where the focus is right now.
And that game turned out to be another loss, beaten by Vegas 4-3. The Islanders lost in Montreal 4-2. College basketball, St. John's over St. Peter's 79-69. Rutgers fell at Pittsburgh 71-60, part of the ACC Big Ten Challenge that also had top-ranked Louisville knocking off 4th-ranked Michigan. Duke with a win at Michigan State. No change atop the College Football Playoff Committee. Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, Georgia. There could certainly be change before the final rankings because LSU plays Georgia Saturday. The feeling is unbeaten LSU will get into the playoff even with a loss, but Georgia won't, and then the final spot would then go to either Utah, Oklahoma, or Baylor. 4 years ago, the Panthers went to the Super Bowl. Cam Newton was the NFL's MVP. Now Newton's injured. His future with Carolina iffy, and Coach Ron Rivera was just fired. Carolina 5-7. His 4th straight loss as assistant Perry Fuel takes over for the rest of the season. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashauer. Tom?
John, thanks so much. Futures up 12, Dow futures up 118. To be clear here, the tit-for-tat back and forth of the news flow of China today, more towards a deal, a delay on tariffs even, and that gives a lift to the market. The VIX 15.28. Need to show dollar weaker, sterling with a 131 print, 131.03. country, stronger sterling for Prime Minister Johnson as he hosts NATO leaders. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
If you're on your lunch break, why not go to Boots.com, where you'll find thousands of fantastic gifts to choose from, like Florence by Mills to Longcomb. If you order from Boots.com, you can collect from a Boots of your choice, such as Boots in London White City Shopping Centre. What better way to shop when it's lovely and sunny like today? So gift like you get them at the fantastical choice of thousands of gifts to order and collect boutique. Charges may apply. See Boots.com for details.
As the impeachment inquiry moves on to the next level, the House Judiciary Committee is holding its first hearings to decide whether to draft 4 more articles of impeachment.
Inquiry into Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States. Trump did not give an expletive about Ukraine.
Listen today to hear an expert panel discuss the grounds for presidential impeachment and whether President Trump's actions in the Ukraine scandal are in fact impeachable. Search Impeachment News on TuneIn to listen.
On his podcast, The Pitch, Josh Muccio follows real entrepreneurs as they pitch to real investors for real money.
So I launched Sun and Soul Foods with a mission of making simple whole food eating more accessible to people living a really busy on-the-go lifestyle. So I'm here today raising $600,000 so I can make this world a healthier place, one bite at a time.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I'll hand out some snacks.
Wonderful. On a new pod club, the host shares some of the podcasts he really loves. Go to podcast on TuneIn to check out The Pitch to see Josh's pod club picks.
It's College Football Conference Championship Weekend, and TuneIn is your home to hear all the champions crowned. This Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, it's the SEC Championship. The undefeated LSU Tigers, led by the Heisman frontrunner quarterback Joe Burrow, look to cap their perfect regular season. However, it won't be easy as their opponent, the Georgia Bulldogs, will be hungry to pull off the upset and earn their ticket to the college football playoff. Catch all the action on TuneIn. Search college football to find your game.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Network of news and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
President Trump is meeting with NATO leaders as House Democrats get ready to resume their impeachment inquiry into whether he abused his presidential powers. Trump just wrapped up a separate talk with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. The White House is acknowledging a sidebar meeting between President Trump and Turkey's President Erdogan.
Turkey is a touchy subject at the NATO meetings, where President Trump's giving Erdogan the green light to invade northern Syria and go after ethnic Kurds that Turkey considers to be terrorists. And there's a long-standing friction because Turkey bought some anti-missile systems from Russia.
There's Bob Costantini.
Well, he's two-faced.
Trump called Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau two-faced after a video emerged of Trudeau and other world leaders joking about Trump. The bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Buffalo has resigned following widespread criticism over how he handled allegations of clergy sexual misconduct. I'm John Trout.
I'm Nick Soboleski, a select quoted.
The world's top business and political leaders prefer to speak to someone who understands them.
We're looking right now at the White House.
Balance of Power with David Weston, weekdays at noon Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And it's now 8:47 on Wall Street. Good morning, I'm John Tucker. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day right here on Bloomberg. Right now, it is a risk-on day. Dow futures pointing to a higher open, up 109 points right now. That is up 0.4%. The S&P futures, 11 points higher right now. That's up 0.4%. NASDAQ E-mini futures up 36 points right now. That's up about 0.5%. We have the 10-year yield. The yield is higher by about 2 basis points. 173 right now as the price is lowered. NYMEX crude, that's up 87 cents a barrel at 56.97. We got the ADP report today. Business payrolls increased in November by 67,000. That is the fewest workers being added to payrolls in about 6 months. Of course, this comes ahead of Friday's all-important payroll report. And that is your Bloomberg Business Flash. It is now 8:48 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Why on earth is Roku stock so expensive? I'm Tara LaChapelle, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. Shares of Roku, the maker of streaming TV devices, have more than quadrupled this year. That's left the company valued at a whopping 280 times EBITDA, a measure of profit. To put that into perspective, that makes Roku almost 10 times more expensive than Netflix. Earlier this week, Morgan Stanley analysts were the latest to warn investors that Roku stock gains may be getting out of hand, and that led to a steep one-day sell-off. Still, Roku devices account for 44% of all connected TV viewing hours, according to industry researcher Conviva. Amazon's Fire TV is in a distant second place, while Apple TV is even further behind. But competition is intensifying as the streaming wars heat up, so Roku's growth will probably start to slow. Even if Roku doesn't get trampled by the streaming giants, its lavish stock price will keep taking hits. I'm Tara LaChapelle. For more Bloomberg Opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
And Bloomberg Opinion commentaries can be heard every weekday at this time. And terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
Good morning, everyone. Tom Keene in New York. This is the interview of the day on the American military and, of course, our extension across the Atlantic in the history, the 70th anniversary of NATO. It is without question a timely interview on the state of the Pentagon in Washington. We do this with James Stavridis. What you need to know within the heritage of Supreme Allied Commander. It started in 1951 with a gentleman named Eisenhower. The esteemed Ridgway followed, and then on to some wonderful names from the past, including General Haig, General Galvin, and I really want to mention John Shalikashvili as well. And they're all generals, and then someone from the sea shows up, the Admiral. Admiral Stavridis, what was it like to be the first Navy guy in the room? What was the body language as a gentleman of the Navy walked in the NATO door?
Yeah, it was bad. I had a sense of 15 generals spinning in their graves. really a shock to the system. In fact, my memoir of those NATO days as Supreme Commander is called The Accidental Admiral, and I think that's what everyone thought. It was just some kind of a huge computer error that delivered me to those shores.
Well, we are honored to have you with us today, and certainly to distill what we've observed. I would go back, Admiral, to the suits and ties, politicking as they do, and we should say that Admiral Stavridis was vetted briefly as a vice presidential candidate along the last path. But I would say, James Stavridis, that there was the gentle dodging of Russian missiles involved with Turkey, and then the photo opportunity of Mr. Erdogan next to Mr. Trump. Explain how NATO, in the serious business of the military, should adjust to Russian missiles in Turkey.
Yeah, let's make a point first, which is NATO is a military alliance, Tom, but your point, its center of gravity is decidedly political. And what we're seeing are centrifugal forces pulling at the alliance today. France's Macron calling it brain dead, Trump sending out ambivalent signals about Article 5, and here we come to Turkey. Erdogan leaning out of the alliance, buying Russian missile systems. We can't integrate those with NATO air defenses. And by the way, he's also conducting joint patrols on the Syrian-Turkish border with Russia and the Russian armed forces. So this is a moment of real discord within the alliance.
Does the Pentagon have the president's ear? I mean, he has established a tone which I have said has Republican and Democrat support, which is, as he said, shape up to Europe. That resonates with a certain American public. How does his tone resonate with his Pentagon?
It's a mixed picture, and one example was just last week when he issued a series of pardons for some of the Special Forces members who were accused of war crimes. That was a real point of disagreement. On NATO, the Pentagon is glad that the president presses the allies to spend more and is having some positive result there. But the Pentagon is also concerned about his lack of enthusiasm, shall we say, for supporting Article 5, because that undermines the confidence of our partners across the Atlantic.
The different people that we have in NATO, and we have the images of our youth, for those of you younger, of substantial American presidents in Germany with the tension of a divided East and West Germany and the complexities of Berlin and the Iron Curtain. But if I look at the 266th Financial Management Support Center, part of the 21st Theater Sustainment Command, what do we actually do in Europe today, Admiral?
First and foremost, we have training exercises where we integrate with our partners. And, Tom, that's where we train to go forward and fight in Afghanistan, where NATO was fully engaged. When I commanded that mission, 150,000 NATO troops in Afghanistan. So Europe is where we train, equip, and organize those forces. Secondly, logistics. You just mentioned logistics. The logistic ability to move those troops forward to not only Afghanistan, but to the Balkans, to the Libyan campaign, to maritime operations off the coast of East Africa for piracy. All that is centered in the NATO command structure, which is in Europe. So I'd say we still need those bases. I'll close, Tom, by saying at the height of the Cold War, you mentioned General Galvin. At the height of the Cold War, he had 400 bases all around Europe. Today, we're down to something like 15 serious bases. So we've already reduced that base structure by 90%. I'd say it's about right where it is.
Do they want us there? So much of the tone that I'm hearing in the endless interviews of suits and ties and occasional dresses in London here at the Grove, north of London at Watford, we avoid the question, do they want us there? What is your belief on that right now, Admiral?
I think they very strongly want us there. President Macron's comments about NATO being brain dead are really driven by a dwindling confidence that the Europeans have in whether the U.S. will come forward or not. That's why it's so important for the president to step up on this Article 5, even as he correctly continues to pressure the Europeans to spend more. So at the end of the day, Europe, again, is a political alliance. Its center of gravity is confidence in Article 5. The Europeans want us there, but they're a little less confident than they were, say, 5 to 10 years ago. We need to work on that.
What is the task of General Wolters now of the United States Air Force with his leadership for America at NATO? What is his task, given what the president has said in the last 48 hours?
First of all, his principal operational task is to continue the operations in Afghanistan, where we have 20,000 NATO troops, much reduced, but still a very significant mission. Secondly, he'll want to keep his eye on the Balkans. Thirdly, he'll want to keep his eye on the Arctic. And fourthly, he'll want to deter Russia. What he is trying to do at the political level, working with the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg of Norway, is to convince the Secretary General and those men and women in suits and dresses to convince the United States to continue to move forward. He has both a diplomatic and a military role to play. And by the way, General Todd Walters was part of my team when I was NATO commander. He's a superb officer and a great choice for the job.
Admiral Stavridis, thank you so much. Near 4 years as Supreme Allied Commander Europe for the United States Navy and for the United States of America. James Stavridis, and I really can't say enough about his new book, strong book, 10 or so chapters on admirals. I commend to you folks the single chapter on the gentleman from submarines, Admiral Rickover. All of Bloomberg Surveillance, we always have a focus on income, and that is always brought to you by PIMCO. For investors who demand more than markets deliver, all investments contain risk and may lose value. Consult your investment professional before investing. And we thank PIMCO for their support through the years. I do a Google search, but I don't know how to spell, the future for Google. Paul Sweeney, very quickly here. We'll talk about it in the next hour. Sea change at Google, or these guys sort of checked out 10 years ago?
Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It was an odd structure to begin with, the alphabet. I know how much you love the alphabet name, but basically 99% of this company is still Google, and they're just kind of simplifying the structure and the management.
Very good. We will continue in our good conversation on economics, finance, investment. Don't forget Jobs Day on Friday. This is
is fast approaching, but fear not, festive friends. With hundreds of new gifts arriving each week, find gems every visit, right up until Christmas Eve. But chop chop, they won't stick around for long.
Gift different at TK Maxx. Ridiculously. Gifts at ridiculously oohoo prices in store and online now.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Dell Cyber Monday for Business is on. Save up to 50% all week across our small business technology and accessories, as well as free delivery and financing offers with low monthly payments. Deals end midnight, Sunday 8th of December. Call 0800 085 4878 to talk to a Dell advisor today. That's 0800 085 4878. Or visit dell.co.uk/SB Deals for details on our best offers this Cyber Monday. Limited time online offer. Hurry while stocks last. T's and C's apply.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
I think the U.S. is going in for a couple of years of very, very strong growth.
The deficit by early in the next decade will start to become a real problem for the markets.
Finance.
The consumer is really strong right now.
We don't realize how good times are now.
Investment.
The biggest problem that people have in investing in stocks is that they get out of the market.
It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. What you need to know right now is a grim ADP data, one single point. Economists will adjust off a relatively optimistic non-farm payrolls of 190,000. You got to believe, Paul, in the next 48 hours, that's got to come down after that 67 statistic for ADP.
Yeah, the ADP print was really surprising, and I think it just calls into question kind of the labor story. But I think the story there on labor is still adding jobs, but at a slower rate.
And as well, I'm just getting conference. It was sort of garbled in the press conference where the President of the United States called Mr. Trudeau of Canada, quote, two-faced. I've just got that verified that I actually heard that correctly. And I guess that's what we saw within the comments as he was sitting with Ms. Merkel.
Yes, and so more headlines coming out of London there at the NATO conference.
Yeah, as well. On equity, and we need to go back to October 2nd, 2015, which was one of the great days where I had to make a key decision, David Wilson. Am I going to go against every instinct and call it Alphabet, or is it Google? And it goes back now 4 years. We've been battling this. It's Google.
It is what you want it to be, I guess. I mean, Alphabet is, at least in a formal sense, the parent company. And Google co-founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin will give up their management duties at Alphabet. Page will be succeeded as Alphabet's CEO by Google's top executive, Sundar Pichai, and Brin had been Alphabet's president. You got all these management changes going on. The two classes of shares of Alphabet that are in the S&P 500 are up 0.5%. We've also got some breaking news, by the way, at Expedia Group, the online travel company. Management changes there, too. CEO Mark Okerstrom and Chief Financial Officer Alan Pickerel are resigning. Expedia also plans to buy back 20 million more shares. So you have that going on. And Chairman Barry Diller is going to buy more stock in the company. You put it all together, though, and the initial reaction is not positive. Well, it is now, actually. Initially, Expedia's shares fell about 3%. They're now higher by about 3%.
It's done in the last 10 years. Expedia has done 16.8% per year. Yeah. I mean, let's be clear. This has been a success, right, David?
Well, it has been. Of course, you've got headlines coming out. Diller talking about how
leveled out the last 4 years.
Yeah, he was saying there was a reorganization that resulted in a loss of focus in their operations, and so that may explain the leveling out. Put it all together, though, and now what had been seen as negative as first is now being viewed positively.
Yeah, I just got an email from our good friend Mandeep Singh at Bloomberg Intelligence, and saying the stock has underperformed recently. It just wasn't well run, so that's kind of the view from the street.
Let's cut to the chase. This is Mr. Diller raising hell.
That's right.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
I just translated that out of the Sweeney.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tom. Moving on, we had some earnings from business software makers that didn't go over so well. One of them was Salesforce.com. The stock's down about 1%. The customer management software company expects fiscal fourth quarter profit to trail in its average estimate in the Bloomberg survey. The outlook signaled a $14.7 billion takeover of Tableau software and a global expansion are raising costs.
Tapestry could merge with Tableau.
Workday down 4.5%. They also make business management software. They forecast slower subscription revenue growth for the fiscal year starting in February than analysts expected. Chesapeake Energy. We're going to just touch on a couple of debt-laden companies. Chesapeake, the most active stock in early trading, up about 11%. The shale producer lined up a $1.5 billion bank loan to finance exchange offers for as much as $1.5 billion of bonds. Chesapeake also offered to buy back a debt issue with $618 million outstanding. And Frontier Communications, up 8.5%. CEO Daniel McCarthy resigned from the telephone company, whose shares plummeted 99% during his tenure. $100 stock now trading for pennies. Former Dish Network executive Bernie Hahn was selected as his successor, and Frontier is seeking to restructure its debt.
They're going to restructure right now. David Wilson, thank you so much. Greatly appreciated this morning. We need to catch up right now on what we're all confronting at home, and we can do this wrapped into the Google news, which, Paul, the anecdotal evidence I see in my trivial life when I'm not doing surveillance or taking the famed surveillance nap is this is a double negative. There's no one not on YouTube.
No, and YouTube is it's such a huge business for Google, and investors really been almost begging Google to disclose it. Okay. It's such a big business. Why aren't you giving us more metrics about it?
Last night, I went to YouTube TV, which I've quit it like 3 times, and I couldn't watch a local hockey game because it was blacked out on NHL Network, obviously, and they didn't have it on my TV carrier.
Yep.
When does that end?
Whenever Google wants to shell out the money for those rights,
the sports teams, whatever the team is, whatever the city, is just saying, look, you got to pay for it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that gets us back to the cable bundle we had X number of years ago.
Yeah, that was a pretty good idea, it turns out.
Amazing. Why don't you bring in our next guest as I try to figure out Canadians Islanders next time around?
Back in the old days time, we used to, we were looking at IPOs, we look at EPS, maybe EBITDA, the old cash flow number. But remember, how about the WeWork and talking about contribution margin and how they define that? So there's a lot of, you take a look at some of these new tech companies, they have some different metrics. Amanda Iacone, Bloomberg tax audit and financial accounting reporter, joins us from the DC studio. Amanda, again, when WeWork came to market, they had something called contribution margin, but it wasn't the contribution margin that we all grew up with in basic accounting. What's going on there?
Hi, guys. Great to be with you this morning. Well, WeWork's accounting obviously got a lot of attention. This particular margin had a lot of exclusions. There were some questions about how WeWork was accounting for its lease expenses. Obviously, rental costs are a big expense for this company. The SEC had some concerns about the difference between its cash rental expense and its straight line rental expense, which is what accounting rules call for. You have to spread those costs out over the lifetime of the lease. And it was a big difference for WeWork, and they were trying to portray a slightly healthier margin.
Yeah, I'll give you slightly healthier. Amanda, you absolutely nail it in your wonderful report. You've got one of the giants of this business, Robert Posen, who for a cup of coffee ran Fidelity as their vice chairman, and of course at MIT Sloan. Bob Posen's one of my favorite people on the planet. He is scathing about this avoidance of fixed costs. Explain that.
Sure. Well, fixed costs are basically the overhead. The cost
really?
They're an important cost, especially for a startup company that's investing a lot of money to grow the business.
Did they ignore them?
They didn't ignore the lease costs, but using this contribution margin allows them to ignore those fixed overhead costs. Stock compensation is a common one that we see being taken out by other companies that are using this metric. Amortization and depreciation is another cost that we see taking out. So they didn't ignore all of them, but they were able to ignore some just by using this metric. And it allowed them to show a rosier picture to show that these properties will be profitable.
So, Amanda, what does the SEC say about some of these different non-GAAP metrics?
So companies are allowed to report non-GAAP metrics. These are metrics that don't comply with generally accepted accounting principles. But there are some strings attached, right? You still have to report the GAAP figure first. That has, we talk about prominence. You have to reconcile your non-GAAP to the GAAP so that investors can see the differences and what's being taken out or ignored. Other changes to the accounting that companies might be taking. And you have to be consistent in how you report these non-GAAP metrics from quarter to quarter. And you're also not supposed to mislead investors, right? You have to be straight with them. Like, this is why we're backing this information out. This is why we're showing you a different metric so that they can decide for themselves whether or not that is a meaningful metric that they should use to measure the future performance of your company.
Amanda Iacone, thanks so much for joining us. Amanda, Bloomberg tax audit and financial accounting reporter. Tom, so, I like community-based EBITDA.
Oh, stop it. Don't get me going. Paul, the biggest mistake, and I've learned this from folks losing money. Trust me, I've enjoyed losing money off of this.
But you've learned.
The conflation and the rationalization of a fixed cost is a variable cost, to me, is the single biggest C-class officer mistake. Is This is not a fixed cost. It's a variable cost, and we'll move on from there.
Exactly right. And I think, I'm sorry.
And
it puts the pressure on investors to try to determine what's what. So I think, at the end of the day, you have to reconcile it, but it just puts more pressure on the investor. This is Bloomberg.
And now with the news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. Donald Trump called Justin Trudeau two-faced after a hot mic video captured the Canadian Prime Minister joking about the U.S. President's extended remarks to reporters at a NATO summit this week. Trump, speaking with reporters about Trudeau at a meeting with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, says, "I find him to be a very nice guy, but the truth is I called him out on the fact that he is not paying 2%, and I guess he's not happy about it." A TV camera caught Trudeau apparently joking about Trump with France's Emmanuel Macron and the UK's Boris Johnson at a reception yesterday. The House Judiciary Committee takes over the impeachment inquiry into President Trump today. The committee will hear from constitutional scholars as it begins to consider whether the evidence laid out in the 300-page report from the Intelligence Committee warrants impeachment. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg Talk.
Michael Barr, Secret Santa, you lucky guy. I hear you're getting a Peloton bike. This is Bloomberg.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's environment of market volatility, Pershing's Prime Services is well positioned to support the needs of hedge funds and other alternative investment managers. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, platform access, or business expansion, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and agile enough to meet your evolving demands. Pershing helps to solve the needs of clients by advocating for them, providing unwavering strength, deep supply, and award-winning service that is at the core of everything we do. Find out what sets Pershing's prime brokerage team apart.
Learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers offered by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Visit our website at Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can fill your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We heart in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
This winter, there's no place like Wicked, the award-winning West End musical. Discover the incredible untold story of the Witches of Oz and how one came to be called good and the other wicked. Wicked at London's Apollo Victoria Theatre. Extra shows added for Christmas.
Ah, Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
You or your business accounts? Who's the boss here? Say goodbye to that shoebox full of receipts and hello to simple solutions from Sage. Over 1 million British businesses already rely on Sage, and we can support you to free up your future with smarter bookkeeping that automates repetitive tasks and gives you the insight you need to inform your decisions. Win-win. Find out more at sage.com/automate.
So conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Sherry Ann.
The Trump administration has been looking at Chinese tech as a national security threat for some time now, and it's focused on companies like Huawei, ZTE, and TikTok. To that end, a new U.S. agency has a $60 billion budget to help developing countries and businesses find alternatives to companies like Huawei and ZTE. Joining us now from Washington is Robert Strayer, the State Department Deputy Assistant Secretary for Cyber and International Communications and Information Policy. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time today. Now, this latest approach seems to be the carrot approach, where you're trying to convince these developing nations to stay away from cheaper Chinese tech. Is this an acknowledgement that perhaps the stick is not working?
Well, for some time, we've sought to work with developing countries to ensure that they can have reliable and secure communications technology. So this isn't a different approach to the matter. Independently, we're also working with partners and allies to educate them about the risks of 5G, that there can be the potential for vendors of 5G to be under control of another government that would require them to take actions that are not in their citizens' interests. And that's particularly the case in countries like China, where there's no independent judiciary or rule of law for a company to object to be made to take actions in line with their intelligence and security services.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker, the Bloomberg Newsroom, with this Bloomberg Business Flash. U.S. equity futures advancing with European stocks after a news report that China and America are moving closer to a trade deal despite heated rhetoric. Treasuries, they're slipping along with the U.S. dollar this morning. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, Dow E-mini futures, 156 points higher. That's up 0.6%. S&P futures, they're up 15 right now. That's up 0.5%. The Nasdaq E-mini futures, 56 points higher. That is up right now 0.7%. We have the Japanese yen 108.66 right now, down slightly against the U.S. dollar. The euro at 111.07, and the 10-year yield, that is up by 2 basis points. Right now, 174 as the price declines. NYMEX crude is down $1.64 at 57.74. And we check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. This report brought to you by IBKR and CME Group. The new Micro E-mini futures contracts are available at IBKR at the lowest commissions. Learn more at IBKR.com/CME Mini. And that is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Tom.
John Tucker, thanks so much. Futures up 16, Dow futures up 156. Interesting day. I really want to focus global Wall Street on a difficult ADP statistic, which sets us up all of a sudden for a more than interesting jobs day as well.
A little bit funny, this feeling inside. I'm not one.
Okay, there it is. Elton John, because this is the way you do a Christmas ad. Last year, John Lewis and partners in the United Kingdom stopped the ad world with Elton John is like a 4-year-old getting his first piano.
Yep, that works.
Talk of the industry.
Yep.
Did it right. Thank you so much. We're so done with Sir Elton. You can let him go because Sir John is with us. Why don't you bring in Mr. Feynman here, Josh Feynman, Sir Josh, I should say,
exactly,
on the biggest ad bust since time began. It's called doing a non-Elton.
Exactly. Josh Feynman, Bloomberg News. Peloton comes out with an ad. A lot of people take it the wrong way or take it in a negative way. Tell us what's going on with Peloton and this new Christmas ad that just recently dropped.
Yes, so they dropped an ad about 2-3 weeks ago, and over the weekend, Thanksgiving, it's getting a lot of social media reaction, mostly negative. I guess the idea that it's sexist because basically the idea is the husband is giving the woman, his wife, I'm assuming, a Peloton for Christmas, and then she vlogs about it for a year and then shows him the video a year later, and she looks very pained as she is doing the Peloton, complaining about how she's waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And it's definitely gone very viral and mainly negative.
And negative in a sense that it's perceived as sexist or implying that she has to lose weight or something along those lines?
I guess that's it, yeah, that she is being, I don't know about forced, but her husband is suggesting that she needs to lose a few. But
so this is like a lose-lose-has concept from the start, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she appears to be sort of model-like in the first place, so you're not exactly sure.
Excuse me here. You're on dangerous ground here. What within Bloomberg News means model-like as well? What I'm seeing is, am I right? I mean, the shares have not done an Uber, right?
No, but I mean, the stock, it actually hit the stock, right, Josh?
It appeared yesterday to be down about as much as over 9%. I mean, I don't know. That was partly the market and partly Peloton. This controversy.
How do they separate themselves right now within our reporting of Peloton and the busted IPOs of 2019? We can't really say they're a busted IPO, even though they're hugely free cash negative, right?
Yeah, I think they're doing okay because, I mean, they came out, I think, around 23, and now they were up to 33. I mean,
yeah, stock came out at $29 a share IPO, and now they're at $33.48. So this is actually, I mean, relative to Uber and Lyft, and this is a home run.
Is this a gift that keeps on giving? I mean, I folks, full disclosure, I've never been in one of their stores, but I've walked by them, counting my steps. And the answers work. The guy I listen to for health is adamant that cycling is by far the best thing. Heated.
I mean, I don't know. Full disclosure, I have a Peloton myself.
There you go. The follow-up ad.
Yeah.
Josh Feynman.
I'll go on a ride a few days ago, 700 people in the morning. By the end of the day, 30,000 people. So it's popular.
People are into their Pelotons, Tom.
Okay. We're going to interrupt right now and go back to London. This is a lunch with Mr. Stoltenberg sitting next to the President of the United States. He's making comments. Let's listen.
But in the meantime, these are the countries I said, I want to take the 2%ers to lunch. We call them affectionately, those 2%ers, but I want to take them to lunch. So this is a lunch that's on me. And I want to thank you all. And if you'd like to say something to the press, you can. But in the meantime, I'll ask our great Secretary General to say a few words.
Very quickly here, the president at a lunch, I believe he requested, and this is a lunch of the people at NATO that have made the correct defense commitment. And Paul, we heard James Stavridis just moments ago on Bloomberg Surveillance really emphasizes continued defense commitment within Europe.
Absolutely, and Admiral Stavridis, made the key comment that it is a training area for NATO forces to be in Europe, to be strong in Europe, and he acknowledged that the forces that are in the Middle East deployed were trained in Europe under the auspices of NATO.
Yeah, and a lot of it to do with Afghanistan and the forward projection as we move east and then over to the Middle East as well. Certainly the president has made this clear, and without question, the single headline you will read about in tomorrow's papers is the president. And I heard it live and really wasn't sure I heard it correctly. We now confirm that through our media sources that he called the leader of Canada two-faced. It wasn't that it was done in jest, but it was sort of a quick, almost flippant phrase, I would say, with respect to the pressures he's under with the lights on.
Exactly right. And, we get all these leaders together and, there's bound to be some commentary, whether it's off mic or on mic.
This was on mic,
yes.
But it was a little garbled. And, I don't want to, we'll see what the media does with it. But nevertheless, that was an important moment today for a very busy president. He alluded he would not take his press conference, fly back to Washington early. We will see on that. We'll have further reports from Maria Tadeo. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Just ahead of the opening bell, looks like a higher open. Dow futures up 126 points. Crude oil is climbing up 2.5% at $57.54 a barrel. Investors are assessing the latest economic report, this one on jobs. And this one came in below expectations. Private employers added a much less than expected 67,000 jobs in November, according to ADP. Economists were expecting 135,000 jobs gained last month, and October was also revised downward. Americans continue to eat less soup, and that hit Campbell's results in the latest quarter. U.S. soup sales fell 3%, which the company attributed to a later than usual Thanksgiving, but Campbell's snacks division rang up gains. And seems many of us will shop online while on the job this holiday season. A new survey from Robert Half shows that 52% of workers will be work shopping or logging into retail sites from the office or while using their corporate-issued device. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills. The kind of skills that companies need to build real products. And the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their, one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
I've got to tell you about our beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Next, we donned our skates for Bath on Ice. I'm a natural. Didn't have to hold on to anything. Or anyone. There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
The S in Audi S-Line stands for many things like sporty, stylish, streamlined, and now seductively priced. Like the new Audi A4 S-Line, which you can now have from £359 per month, £2,154 initial rental. Test drive one at your local Audi centre, but you'll have to be swift. The offer ends soon. Search Audi S-Line. Audi, Vorsprung durch Technik. With 48-month contract hire, 10,000 miles per annum, 18s and over, subject to status. Damage charges may apply. No ownership. Ordered by 31st of December 2019 from participating centres. Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.uk.
This week at Tesco, buy 2 items from our chilled party food range, like tempura prawns or mozzarella sticks, and get a third one free. So for every 2 people you invite, you can ask another for free. But who? Linda from Accounts or Julio from Magaluf 2010. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Cheapest item free, selected stores while stocks last, ends 1st of January.
As the impeachment inquiry moves on to the next level, the House Judiciary Committee is holding its first hearings to decide whether to draft 4 more articles of impeachment.
Inquiry into Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States. Trump did not give an expletive about Ukraine.
Listen today to hear an expert panel discuss the grounds for presidential impeachment and whether President Trump's actions in the Ukraine scandal are in fact impeachable. Search Impeachment News on TuneIn to listen.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
It is now 9:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm John Tucker. The opening bell is being brought to you by SEI. Imagine your asset management firm's operational infrastructure as a competitive advantage. Let SEI show you how at SEIC.com/IMS. It's been risk on all morning long, along with European stocks after the news report that China and America are moving closer to a trade deal. And right at the outset, we have the Dow Jones Industrial Average up 132 points right now, up about 0.5%. We're at 27,629. The S&P 500, 10 points higher. That's up 0.4% at 3104. NASDAQ Composite Index right now, that is up 39 points. That's up about 0.5% at 8560. And that is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Tom.
John Tucker, thanks so much. And again, green on the screen, up 125 right now. The VIX 14.96 gets back towards where it was 4 days ago. Paul, as you know, there's any number of 2020 views. This year, next year.
Yes.
U.S. media forecast, all these kind of things you have to read. And the answer is you actually read Brian Weiser of Pivotal, and this on the United Kingdom, but more on the U.S. Why don't you begin, Brian, on the nuances of a nice executive summary of the path forward?
Exactly. Brian Weiser, he is Group M Global President, Business Intelligence. He is the go-to person when we're talking global advertising. Brian, thanks so much for joining us on the phone. So let's talk about 2019 first of all. A pretty good year for advertising, right?
Yeah, no, it definitely was a very strong year. It's unusually strong, as 2018 was too. And you could then make the question, well, why was it so unusually strong? And the reality is that there's so many digital-based, digital-first, digital-endemic marketers, the likes of Amazon, the likes of Facebook, as a marketer again, not as a seller of advertising. Dozens of companies are probably driving almost all the growth, and it's skewing growth into digital, and so it makes it look like we have a really healthy advertising market, but it's not sustainable at these levels.
So, Brian, is this just a story, as we think about global advertising, you mentioned some of the big digital players, is this just a game of the haves and have-nots that, you know, if you're a Google and a Facebook, life is great, but if you're a CBS or, you know, a Comcast or a Disney and you've got broadcast and cable networks, it's not such a good story?
That's a good way to put it. It's not exactly terribly negative for TV-centric media owners. It's just not necessarily going to be much of a growth market anytime soon. And I think if we look at now, print is really it's all bad. Radio is kind of stable. Outdoors is a really healthy medium, which may surprise some. But yeah, have and have not is a general way to characterize it.
Brian, one of your great things at Group M, and of course before that at Pivotal, was the idea of traditional TV is not dead. Everybody calling for the death of TV, and you saying, no, no, no. What I'm seeing, and I mentioned this earlier, folks, my anecdotal evidence is pretty much everybody on the planet in some way or another is using YouTube. In your analysis, do you fit in YouTube revenue?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, YouTube is still primarily something you would bucket into the digital or internet line item, because the vast majority of spending is meant to be comparable to internet-related advertising. Yeah. And it's a big piece of spending, absolutely.
Well, compare it to the small slices. Is YouTube, Brian Weiser, is YouTube bigger than newspapers?
Not yet. Okay. But that said, it's not hard to imagine YouTube being bigger than newspapers. That's a fun headline to think about at some point soon. Because at the end of the day, newspapers continue to shrink by double digits, even including newspapers' digital revenues. You know, we're estimating about $12 billion on newspapers today. I don't have YouTube obviously doesn't disclose its numbers, but yeah, YouTube's probably not that far from newspapers.
So, Brian, let's talk about the ad agencies here. There's been a concern that maybe they're getting disintermediated, that you don't really need to go to a big ad agency. All you need to do is kind of go to Google or Facebook, and they'll put the dollars where, the people are. What's your call, or what's your thought about how the big ad agencies, the WPPs, the Omnicoms of the world, how do they fit into the mix going forward?
Yeah, well, generally, the largest marketers certainly benefit from having agencies. There's reasons why many of them choose to do certain parts of their marketing activities themselves, whether that's the creative or the media side. And they've got to consider there's pros and cons to doing so, right? Yes, you can probably move faster in some ways if you do everything yourself, but then maybe the choices aren't as involving as broad or deep a knowledge base as if you're using an external entity. It's the very same issue that I think every industry has, or professional services industries have, with respect to insourcing versus outsourcing. Just today, though, one of our competitors just story in Adweek about Coty, which is a obviously packaged goods company, just sending their media back to an agency.
Interesting.
Interesting. So that happens all the time too.
I mean, what's so interesting here is we're all experiencing new ways of delivering these messages to us. And, like Brian, let's just go through them now. A given sports meet, they're now staying with the sports event on part of the screen as they show the ad. Mm-hmm. Who's winning when they do that? Does ExxonMobil sending a message win, or did they lose?
I think the long-term health of the business for any given medium will definitely benefit from, trying to put a consumer experience first. I think that this has been a problem for television in the United States more generally. Commercial clutter is a problem. Unfortunately, most large advertisers look on a very short-term basis. It doesn't necessarily prove to be less effective. But I would argue that if the consumer experience is really negative, it generally will make it a less desirable environment over time.
Well, you mentioned time. What's the appropriate time ad for Brian Weezer? 3 seconds?
That's a good length. I try to be brief.
No, but I meant the ad length is 3 seconds. Or can we get out to 15 seconds? Or is that too long now?
It totally depends. I just saw someone who's a TikToker, not the Bloomberg former TikTok, but someone doing a TikTok thing where you can imagine a 3-second ad fitting really well.
Bloomberg surveillance.
But in traditional TV, the idea of the 2-minute ad break has generally worked. So it really just depends on the medium and the context in which the message is being delivered.
Well, sports is still king. I see that Fox sold all their ads, maybe like $5.6 million each or something like that. So, Brian, sports is still there, right?
Yeah, I think so. There's been maybe overinvestment in some respects in sports on the part of networks. It is still the environment that will capture more live viewing. It's still really important. It's 10 to 15% of all TV viewing is sports, and it probably has disproportionate value.
We're going to have to leave it there. Brian Weezer, thank you so much. With Group M, Smart UN review of all this stuff. Paul, it's not that I would have a clue where we're going to be in 24 months. I can't imagine 5 years from now. I mean, when Gunsmoke was going off the air, Perry Mason was long gone. We couldn't imagine where we would be 5 years from that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big pivot, Tom, is it seems to be right now is streaming. That's the big pivot in how people are consuming media. So 5 years from now, who knows?
Is a surveillance correction in order? I believe so.
Okay,
Axel from Germany emails in. I described the flag of Chancellor Merkel as yellow, black, and red. It is gold, not yellow. I stand corrected with my apologies to Germany.
Let's get national headlines right now with Michael Barr. Michael.
Paul, Tom, the House Judiciary Committee today holds its first impeachment hearing. It comes after the House Intelligence Committee revealed its 300-page impeachment report. Democratic Committee Chairman Adam Schiff says the investigation found that President Trump placed his own personal and political interests above the national interest of the United States. It all happened as President Trump was overseas meeting with NATO leaders. Meanwhile, President Trump reacted after Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was captured on a hot mic joking about the president's extended remarks to reporters at a NATO summit this week.
Well, he's two-faced.
Do you think that Germany's too naive?
And honestly, with Trudeau, he's a nice guy. I find him to be a very nice guy. But, you know, the truth is that I called him out on the fact that he's not paying 2%, and I guess he's not very happy about it.
Trump spoke to reporters at a meeting with German Chancellor Angela Merkel today. A TV camera caught Trudeau apparently joking about Trump with France's Emmanuel Macron and the UK's Boris Johnson at a reception yesterday. Meanwhile, there's late word that President Trump says he is canceling his news conference at the end of the NATO summit. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Appreciate that. With green on the screen up 173 points. The VIX, 14.73. You're going to be flying early and often into 2020. We'll talk about that next. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and...
At Lidl, we're big on getting in the Christmas spirit with our award-winning 8-year-old Queen Margot blended Scotch whisky for just $12.99 and our award-winning range of Hortus Artisan gins and gin liqueurs from only $9.99. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
This week at Tesco, buy 2 items from our chilled party food range, like tempura prawns or mozzarella sticks, and get a third one free. So for every 2 people you invite, you can ask another for free. But who? Linda from Accounts or Julio from Magaluf 2010. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Cheapest item free, selected stores while stocks last, ends 1st of January.
Great music gets people moving. So here's the perfect gift for someone who's always on the go. The highly portable, special edition Bose SoundLink Mini Bluetooth speaker. Now only $149 in the Black Tag gift event at Curry's PC World. Big sound, deep bass, and 6 months free Spotify for great music right through from the Christmas party to the beach party season. Make anyone's Christmas at Curry's PC World. T's and C's apply.
As the impeachment inquiry moves on to the next level, the House Judiciary Committee is holding its first hearings to decide whether to draft 4 more articles of impeachment.
Impeachment inquiry into Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States. Trump did not give a expletive about Ukraine.
Listen today to hear an expert panel discuss the grounds for presidential impeachment and whether President Trump's actions in the Ukraine scandal are in fact impeachable. Search Impeachment News on TuneIn to listen.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
News 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
On Capitol Hill, correspondent Manu Raju reads from a portion of what will be an opening statement from one of the constitutional scholars, presumably to be read moments from now, before the House Judiciary Committee in the impeachment hearing.
One from Michael Gerhardt, who's one of the Democratic witnesses invited by the Democrats from the University of North Carolina, says the president's serious misconduct, including bribery, soliciting a personal favor from a foreign leader in exchange for his exercise of power and obstructing justice in Congress, are worse than the misconduct of any prior president, including what previous presidents who faced impeachment have done or been accused of doing.
In London, President Trump calls Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau two-faced after he was overheard appearing to gossip about Trump. Trump believes Trudeau is unhappy about him calling out Canada for what Trump says is that nation's unfair economic share of NATO costs. I'm John Trout.
So, what would you do with an extra $500?
Deep understanding in record time.
$2 billion, not exactly what they were going for.
They're going to be profitable.
Bloomberg Business Week, weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker in the Bloomberg newsroom of this Bloomberg Business Flash, 947 on Wall Street. Stocks rising in the early going with the bond prices falling. There is, again, speculation the U.S. and China are going to reach a deal that avoids tariffs that are set to take hold on the 15th. S&P 500 has halted its three-day slide after we reported negotiators are getting near an agreement on the amount of tariff relief in a Phase 1 accord between China and the United States. We have among the most actively traded stocks this morning, shares of Roku. They are up another 1.3%. As we check the major averages right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 177 points. That's a rise of 0.7%. S&P 500, 18 points higher. That's up 0.6%. The Nasdaq Composite Index is up 46 points right now. That is up 0.6%. Volatility Index, the VIX, down about 8% at 1475 right now. And as we look at the 10-year yield, 174, that is up by 2 basis points. NYMEX crude is up $1.83 at 57.94. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
John Tucker, thank you so much. One of the charms of an interview with David Rubenstein is he really has an ability to talk to people doing operating businesses. I constantly speak of his best-in-class interview with Mr. Bezos of Amazon, which, got Rubenstein like touchy-feely philanthropy and all that. But it was really about the operating strategy of Mr. Bezos. He stays with the bees. He's done it again with Ed Bastian of Delta Airlines. Here's David Rubenstein and Ed Bastian on the oddities, the valuations of the airline business.
Why is it that Wall Street doesn't value airlines as much as you think they should?
Our largest investor is Warren Buffett. He now owns 11% of Delta. He said, you guys are the Chicago Cubs of the business world. You not only had a bad decade, you had a bad century. And so we got our bad century out of the way, and we're now in a place where we've really fixed the business.
Ed Bastian of Delta Airlines, and to bring in David Rubenstein, and of course this is Peer-to-Peer Conversations, a wonderful set of interviews. David, I am thrilled you picked Ed Bastian, who's one of my heroes. At 24 years old, as an accountant holed up in a skyscraper, this guy discovered one of the greatest fraud schemes in corporate history in his career. I mean, he could have got fired, but instead his career worked around because he had the courage at 24 to do what few can do.
He did, and he discovered a $50 million fraud. He was promoted, but ultimately he was thought of as being more than just an accountant, and he was brought into Pepsi to work on Frito-Lay as a financial officer, and then was recruited ultimately to go to Delta. And at Delta, he's risen up from being a financial person to being the CEO, and done a pretty good job, I would say. We heard on the opening clip Warren Buffett's views on airlines, and although he's a big shareholder in Delta, I think Warren famously said that a capitalist, if he'd been at Kitty Hawk, would have shot down Orville Wright and Wilbur Wright, because for a century they didn't really make any money in the airline industry. It's more profitable now, and the reason it's more profitable is because there are fewer airlines, less competition, you could say, but they're much better at algorithms in making certain that they're not flying with empty seats. They really make certain if you go on a plane now that seats are full. They know that much better than they did before.
David, you haven't flown commercial in like 42 years. What they do, David, is they fly them at 105% capacity at the gate at Reagan. They're like paying you $1 zillion to stay off the plane. What is the Delta distinction versus their competition in this crazy business?
One of the things is that they own their own refinery. And one of the most important factors in airlines is the cost of fuel. And they have their own refinery, and as a result of that, they can probably buy energy a little bit cheaper than others. Also, they have a very good program that as a result of their going through bankruptcy at one point, they agreed to give, I think it's roughly 15% of profits to the employees. So they have a very happy employee base relative to other airlines, I think.
So it's interesting, David. What I love about your peer-to-peer conversations is that you always get to the personal, the background, what the development of the people you're chatting with. What were some of your key takeaways from Ed Bastian as he talked about how he got to where he is today?
Well, I'm an only child, and so I don't know what it's like to be in a big family. He's the oldest of 9 children. Wow. So I can't imagine what it's like growing up with 8 younger siblings. I guess it's better to be the oldest than the youngest, but obviously it was an experience that helped him. And he didn't come from a wealthy family or anything like that. His father was a dentist. They had a dental operation in his family's house. His mother was a dental assistant. They raised 9 children, and he obviously had a drive that is just quite extraordinary. You don't associate accountants with being great business managers, though I don't want to denigrate accountants, but usually you get people that have MBAs or have had operating experience, but he kind of went right from the accounting background to financial business in Delta, and really has done a great job operating that company through bankruptcy. He wasn't the CEO in bankruptcy, but he later became the CEO and pulled off the merger with Northwest. So I'd say he's one of the most respected airline executives in the world today.
So, David, what did Mr. Bastian have to say as it relates to the future of this industry? Is there going to be more consolidation? What do you do with some of these upstart, low-cost airlines? What does he say about the future?
Well, I don't think there's going to be that much more consolidation, but I do think he feels that there's unfair competition because a lot of the airlines with whom he's competing are being subsidized by foreign governments. In other words, Delta flies outside the United States, but they're often competing with airlines that are really subsidized and to some extent owned by foreign governments. And he would like to kind of make sure that would not more of an even playing field than there is now. I think today, when people fly, they're not going to get a lot of food. It's going to be more crowded, but prices are low, relatively speaking. And airline deregulation occurred really in the Carter administration, and since that time, airline prices have come way down compared to what it was in the old days.
Where's the distrust, David, that they don't do the foolish things they used to do? Have we really settled into an understanding, as Mr. Buffett would suggest, of a more mature, tactical, and strategic approach? Or is there just always that risk of the swashbuckle to come back?
Well, of course, if airlines have problems when, let's say, there are international crises and people stop flying, or if there's a crash, which doesn't occur very much anymore in commercial airlines, that scares people. But generally, I think people have now adopted the idea that they need to fly and they should fly, and it's the best way to get to long distances. And so I think this is part of our lifestyle for quite some time. I should have added as well that they have an advantage over some of the other airlines because they did not make orders for the Boeing 737 MAX.
Interesting.
And therefore, they don't have a lot of other airlines are scrambling to get replacement planes for those now grounded. And they didn't have that problem because they ordered Airbus equivalents.
I believe it was Ryanair with headlines on that today. David Rubenstein, thank you so much. And folks, this is really quite interesting. David Rubenstein, and of course, peer-to-peer conversations with Ed Bastian of Delta Airlines. We'll see that today. Paul, that's interesting in that we study security analysis around beliefs of a sector, and sometimes those beliefs are fundamentally changed. For you and me, that happened with the airlines.
Yeah, the airlines, it's an industry. It's interesting as Warren Buffett, to see Warren Buffett as an investor, that gives the industry a vote of certain confidence that I don't think the industry had before. It's such a cutthroat industry in terms of pricing, and it's so capital intensive. And then you've got all the other, competitive issues, and it's just a brutal business. But it appears like the industry's kind of, as David Rubenstein mentioned, kind of consolidated down to a fairly decent marketplace now.
I would respectfully suggest that Delta takes 18 or 19 cents EBITDA down the income statement, 19 cents in the dollar, with a Graham, Dodd, and Cottle net income of a dime on a dollar. Is that Apple? No. Is it, name the other Amazon? No. But it's like a legit business now. Yep. Is it going to sustain?
All right, I'm going to hop on the Delta shuttle today up to Boston. And I would just guarantee you it will be fully loaded plane. Gone are the days where you could get
76% capacity.
Yeah, and you'd have the whole road to yourself. You could stretch out. I can't remember the last time I had an empty seat next to me.
And David mentioned that. I totally agree with you that bodies in the seat has been the revolution.
Yeah.
And,
and how they price it now. You pay for it. Do you want a peanut? Okay, here's another $5 for the peanut.
Yeah, but the issue, and we make jokes about it, folks, and the Gulfstream is great, but a couple times a year I fly commercial, and I'm not flying like everybody else, to be honest. I'm very privileged to not have to put up with it. And what my kids are paying for steerage, the prices are shocking. They're giving away the flights.
Yeah, the back of the plane. Absolutely.
The middle child's dashing off to Paris. When did you and I go to Paris when we were in our 20s?
I'm going to Boston today to sing for my supper.
She's going like to Paris for, I don't know. When are you coming back? I don't know. It's up to Mr. Macron. She's going, and I'm all upset, and I'm screaming and ranting about this. And Mrs. Keene turns to me and says, "You idiot! It cost $286."
Kind of like the fares from People's Airline back in the day.
Yeah, really. Yep. No, that's an equivalency.
Yeah, so I mean, it's historically been a very tough business to make money in. But I was just looking at the stock, 20% CAGR over the last 10 years for Delta Airlines. It's underperformed this year, but the market. But it's been a very good stock.
I still got to do this with Sweeney, folks. That was just a massive jargon alert. What is CAGR?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we have to define that. Compounded annual growth rate. Yeah,
it's like a growth rate.
Yeah, it's is it a good stock or not? And it's been a pretty good stock, very good stock actually.
You see that under the total return function at Bloomberg. We use our terminals here on Bloomberg Surveillance. We need to say thank you, particularly to our London team, remote north of London as well, and to our team in New York for their great work around presidential press conferences. We are produced by Richard Truman. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
At Lidl, we're big on getting in the Christmas spirit with our award-winning 8-year-old Queen Mango blended Scotch whiskey for just $12.99, and our award-winning range of Hortus Artisan gins and gin liqueurs from only $9.99. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores, excludes an eye.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like for reals. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Where's your views on the municipal bond landscape?
The market does not like uncertainty, does not react well to uncertainty.
There's a whole lot of optimism around the valuation of Uber.
What is Ford saying about the self-driving car?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Maybe we're getting hooked on debt and low interest rates.
The black hole called power could be a bigger black hole.
A toxic brew of slower revenue growth.
There is now this belief that Amazon maybe can do anything.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Wednesday morning from New York City to our worldwide audience. I'm Paul Sweeney. Lisa Abramowitz is out today. Coming up, we will take the House Judiciary Committee. They're holding hearings today to discuss constitutional grounds for impeachment. We'll have updates throughout the morning. Plus, we'll also take a look at Expedia. CEO and CFO out. Barry Diller in. We'll get the details. But first, let's go to John Tucker of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. John.
Yeah, and Paul, let's focus on some breaking economic news. We've heard all the news about the slowdown in manufacturing. Now we're looking at the ISM non-manufacturing index. This is the biggest part of the economy. Services for November coming in at 53.9. This is below the survey consensus of 54.5 and below the prior month's reading of 54.7. So lower non-manufacturing index from ISM this morning. The immediate reaction kind of muted right now. The 10-year yield still at 174. That's up about 2 basis points. Dow Jones Industrial Average, that is up 192 points right now. Up 0.7%. We're at 27,693. The S&P 500, 21 points higher. That's up 0.7% at 3115. The Nasdaq Composite Index right now 58 points higher. That's up 0.7 at 8579. Another report pointing to a slowdown in hiring. That story from Bloomberg's Benny Del Giudice.
Unemployment is running at historic lows, but job growth is moderating. Payroll provider ADP says businesses added the fewest jobs in 6 months, just 67,000 in November. The global economy is slowing and trade uncertainty stretching on amid White House tariffs denting corporate spending. Look for official data Friday in the government's employment report. Benny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
We have the Euro 1.11 right now. That is up 0.2% against the U.S. dollar. And NYMEX crude is up 2.10 a barrel at 58.19. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and Market Drivers brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, transporting computing professionals into data scientists to meet demand in the fast-growing field. More at njit.edu/Jersey City. And Paul, back to you.
John Tucker, thank you so much. The market's definitely staging a turnaround from that sell-off we saw yesterday. We have the S&P up 22 points. Let's get a sense of where the market action is with Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what are you looking at this morning?
It's a pretty broad-based advance we're seeing early on. More than 10 stocks up in the S&P 500 for everyone that's down. All 11 of the main industry groups higher. And really, it's sort of the economically sensitive shares leading the way. Energy, raw materials, industrial stocks, all at the forefront of the gains. All those industry group indexes up more than 1% at the moment. So, the idea that maybe something does happen in the U.S.-China trade dispute looks positive for the economy if you're judging by how stocks are doing. Of course, we could have had this same discussion earlier in the week, and it would have been basically turned on its head. So really kind of stocks are being driven day to day by developments on the trade front, if only because, we're sort of in between earnings periods and there's not a whole lot of company news to go by, though there are a few stories, and I know we'll be talking about one of them momentarily, what's happening over at Expedia Group.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That one's an interesting story, Dave. Expedia forcing out resigning the CEO and the CFO. This is a Barry Diller-controlled company. Let's get into some details. Mandeep Singh, senior tech analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. So, Mandeep, tell us what's going on in Expedia. I see the stock up 8% today, so the market likes what's going on. What's going on there?
Well, clearly the firing of the CEO and CFO came as a surprise, although I would say the operational performance of the company really trailed its peer, notably Booking.com. And when you look at the last quarter they reported, the company revised its EBITDA target downward by 700 basis points. So it kind of was reflective of the ongoing troubles they had with integrating Vrbo, which is their alternative accommodation segment. That's the growth category when it comes to all these travel guys. And Expedia just had a tough time, growing that segment, and it's reflective of poor execution.
So Barry Diller, the media mogul, 77 years old. What do you think he wants to do with this company? Is he going to go out and try to find a new management team to kind of right the ship, or does he sell it? I know he's got a million other companies.
I mean, the good thing for Expedia is this space is consolidated. There are just two players, Booking.com and Expedia in US and Europe. They dominate the market. It's a duopoly. So chances are the company should be able to turn itself around. And I think what Barry will likely do is to bring in a new CEO, similar to Dara. I think Dara is the CEO of Uber now.
Dara Khosrowshahi.
Thank you for that pronouncer, because I cannot do that name for the life of me, and I tried.
and so before Dara left for Uber, Expedia was doing remarkably well, in terms of especially the operational side of things. And so to my mind, he's going to bring in somebody new, probably from the outside. And you're going to see some changes when it comes to Vrbo. Like I said, that's the growth segment for the company. And the company needs to at least grow in line with the overall growth in the online travel segment, which is, close to 10%. So the top line deceleration is very pronounced in Expedia, and that needs to change, I think.
So Dave Wilson, it's kind of odd to me. I would feel if I were the CEO, I'd be a little concerned here. I'm getting booted out, and the stock's up 9%. That doesn't happen very often.
Well, that's just one piece of the puzzle, though. Expedia talked about how they're buying back 20 million more shares, so increasing a repurchase program. And, 20 million, you're looking at something like 14% of the equity. And on top of that, Diller said in a press release announcing these management changes that he's going to buy more stock. So, a show of confidence in the company from the guy who's really behind it all anyway, and, basically controls Expedia through his ownership of super voting shares.
That's his MO with that super voting stock. So, Mandeep, just lastly, when I think about the travel business, as you mentioned, we're down to two players here, Bookings and Expedia. Do those companies have to worry about just Google or just, some disruptor coming into the business? How viable or how secure are those two players?
Yeah, so you make a great point. Google has become more of a threat to online travel players, especially with this recent changes to its algorithm. So all the free traffic that used to go to Booking and Expedia doesn't go there anymore because Google is actually competing with them. And so that is a big threat. But again, it goes back to a new person has to come in and really make a lot of strategic changes at Expedia to kind of fend off all these threats.
Mandeep Singh, thank you so much for joining us, Senior Technology Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokerage Studio. Dave Wilson, thanks so much, Bloomberg Stocks Editor, giving us the lowdown on what the action going on in the marketplace. Again, Expedia, the stock continues to climb here. The stock is up 9% on the news that the CEO and CFO are being pushed out, in effect. Barry Diller, the control owner, says that we'll look for a new management team, as Mandeep suggested. They have an operational turnaround to do there. But again, it's down to basically a duopoly in the online travel business. And as we see global travel continue to be a growth business, you would think they would be in a good competitive position. But as Mandeep mentioned, Google is always out there, and people are changing the way they book travel online. So we'll have to see how this plays out. But again, a good day for the stock, up 9.5%. Still down about 3% for the year. So as Mandeep suggested, it's been underperforming. So we got a good turnaround there. So we'll focus on that going forward. Still a very risk-on day here in the market. S&P now up about almost 0.8% here, green on the screen, reversing the big sell-off we saw yesterday. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. For world and national headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Paul, the impeachment inquiry is heading into a new phase right now, with the House Judiciary Committee opening its first hearing on whether to draw up articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump. Bloomberg's Kevin Cirilli reports from the White House.
There's going to be 4 professors that are testifying, legal scholars that are going to be testifying before the House Judiciary Committee. 3 of them selected by the Democrats in control of the committee. 1 of them selected by the Republicans.
Now, prepared remarks from the Democrats' legal witnesses say the evidence shows impeachable abuse of power and high crimes and misdemeanors committed by President Trump. The Republicans' expert, George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley, says the case would be the thinnest ever brought to impeach a president of the United States. Again, this hearing is just getting underway. Bloomberg Terminal customers can watch it at LiveGo. President Trump is wrapping up the 2-day NATO summit in London after a series of bilateral meetings, including an unscheduled sit-down with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The president says the safe zone Turkey has established in northern Syria is working out.
The ceasefire is holding very much so, and I think people are surprised. And maybe someday they'll give me credit, but probably not. But it worked out well. They've been trying to do this for 100 years.
During a sit-down with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, the president was asked about a video showing her, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and the leader of the Netherlands apparently joking about him. The president called Trudeau two-faced. He also says he'll leave London early and not hold the customary post-summit news conference because he's had so many encounters with the press already. Global news on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Pickets.
From the business community, has it become normal?
Tariffs.
That is also below what the market is looking for.
Trade wars.
Give us an idea of how things are likely to evolve.
You don't want to turn away for a second. Don't worry, we're watching too.
Chief Asia economist joining us from our studios in Hong Kong.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
Trade war got to be the top of mind there.
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You're fierce. You take care of business and don't hold back. Taking care of your health shouldn't be any different. You know when something's off. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, and rashes. Listen to your body. It could be lupus. We're here to help you take control. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Millions of people are missing out by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB offers interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. Plus, you can stop your friends and family missing out by recommending the Plus account to them. And when they switch, you'll both earn £75. Search online or visit your local branch. Terms and conditions apply.
Some people get very excited by Christmas shopping, and they've probably done all theirs already back in July. But if the thought of Christmas shopping gives you sweaty palms, tell yourself, I'm not a shopper, I'm a gifter. Then as a gifter, the possibilities are endless with TK Maxx. Give more adventurously with TK Maxx's range of gifts at prices. With big brand bargains across apparel, home, jewellery, kids' toys and more. In-store and at tkmaxx.com. Gift different with TK Maxx.
How many tours till Christmas? You know it's not far off when the Advent calendar goes up. At Asda, we've a great range to choose from, including Maltesers and Galaxy calendars for just £2 each. And our Asda Free-From Advent calendar, just £2.50. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability, 93 grams to 110 grams.
This week at Tesco, buy 2 items from our chilled party food range, like tempura prawns or mozzarella sticks, and get a third one free. So for every 2 people you invite, you can ask another for free. But who? Linda from Accounts or Julio from Magaluf 2010? Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Cheapest item free, selected stores while stocks last, ends 1st of January.
As the impeachment inquiry moves on to the next level, the House Judiciary Committee is holding its first hearings to decide whether to draft 4 more articles of impeachment.
Impeachment inquiry into Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States. Trump did not give an expletive about Ukraine.
Listen today to hear an expert panel discuss the grounds for presidential impeachment and whether President Trump's actions in the Ukraine scandal are in fact impeachable. Search Impeachment News on TuneIn to listen.
Don't want to miss a second of your NFL team's next matchup? Let TuneIn remind you. Just make sure notifications are enabled on your phone and search for your team profile on the TuneIn app. Then, find the game you want under events and tap Notify Me. We'll send you an alert as soon as live coverage begins.
Want to know what's happening in right now? The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium.
Running down the sidelines and running in for the touchdown. And it is good!
This Thursday, hear the home and away call as the Dallas Cowboys visit the Chicago Bears at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
It's a block! Easy touchdown! A walk-in touchdown! The 3rd time's a charm!
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today. It's College Football Conference Championship Weekend, and TuneIn is your home to hear all the champions crowned. This Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, it's the SEC Championship. The undefeated LSU Tigers, led by the Heisman frontrunner quarterback Joe Burrow, look to cap their perfect regular season. However, it won't be easy as their opponent, the Georgia Bulldogs, will be hungry to pull off the upset and earn their ticket to the college football playoff. Catch all the action on TuneIn. Search college football to find your game.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Well, we were getting more news on China trade, positive news, so stocks go up. We check those numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is up 0.7% of 21. Dow's up 0.6% of 178, and the Nasdaq's up 0.6% of 54. The 10-year is down 14.30 seconds, the yield is 1.76%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 3.7% at 58.18 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 0.4% at 14.7890 an ounce. The dollar yen 108.81. The euro $1.1098. The British pound $1.3116. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, we are 10 plus years into this economic cycle. We've got a Fed on the sideline. We've had great returns in 2019. What do we do in 2020? Well, there's nobody better to chat about that on the fixed income side than Tad Revell. Tad is Chief Investment Officer for Fixed Income for TCW, a little firm out on the West Coast, $170 billion under management. He joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. So, Tad, I know you wrote recently about a liquidity crisis. What do you mean by whenever I see the word crisis, it grabs my attention, having lived through the financial crisis of 2008. What do you mean by a liquidity crisis?
Maybe we should parse that a little bit. I think the point that's trying to be made is that all economic cycles, all asset price cycles ultimately end in some type of a crisis. It doesn't necessarily have to be of the scale as we saw in 2008, but let me give you a quick example about why it's almost inevitable. It's part of the human DNA, if you will. So most everyone has probably or perhaps had the experience of looking at a house to buy perhaps in a hot market. So what's that world like? The moment that the house gets listed, you show up on the door and so do 20 other people. And maybe you're thinking, I'm putting my whole life savings into this home and I need to do my due diligence and ask a lot of questions. I want to ask about the roof, the foundation, maybe the crazy neighbors who live next door. And the seller, if you are able to buttonhole him, is going to look at you like you've got two heads. He's going to look at you and he's going to say, hey, I got 20 people here. I only want to hear from you how much over offer side price you want to pay, all cash. Otherwise, don't waste my time. The point is that in a bull market, in a booming market, you don't get to do your due diligence. You don't get to ask questions. Okay, fast forward a couple of years. Now maybe the market is stone cold. Maybe you bought the house. So you wait a couple of weeks after listing and one barely qualified buyer walks in the door and he wants to do his due diligence. And he's not going to accept non-answers to questions about the roof and the foundation. And every time you can't answer a question, he's going to make a worst-case assumption about it. And so consequently, ultimately, when that buyer, recognizing that he's got market power, wants to potentially place an offer on your property, there's going to be a huge disagreement between you, the seller, who says, hey, I paid X, the market's down maybe 5%, but what you're talking about is paying me down 20%.
Right.
So I'll call that a liquidity crisis. Does that happen in the credit markets? Think about the drive-by deals that were prevalent, if not ubiquitous, in 2017, and think ahead to the possibility that in a cooler or cold credit market, we probably will face some type of a liquidity crisis where the buyers say, I got in at par, I'll sell you down a few points, but I'm not going to pay 60. I'm not going to allow you to take this credit off my hands at 65 cents on the dollar. And by the way, you've already seen a lot of single name idiosyncratic volatility. So I think that if this sounds a little theoretical, just take a look at some of the market action in high yield in the loan space over the last year. It might disabuse you of that idea.
That's where I wanted to go. Have you seen any meaningful evidence that maybe we are in or approaching liquidity crises in any major of the fixed income markets that TCW plays in?
Well, I think we are actually, and there's as I mentioned, there's certainly been a significant amount of single name volatility in the loan space. We could take or make a few statements about the high yield market because I think that's very instructive. What you're seeing in the high yield market is very strange, or how do I say it? If you look at the performance of the CCC bond class, the CCC bonds are up on a total return basis year to date, something like 4 to 5%. The high yield market overall, on average, is up double digits. The equity market, as you pointed out, is, I don't know, north of 15% on a year-to-date basis. Who would have expected the CCC asset class to have so badly underperformed in what would otherwise appear to be such a positive risk here? I think what it speaks to is that the market is discriminating between risk. And once it starts discriminating between risk, you are perhaps well on your way towards stepping into an environment that will be a liquidity crisis of some kind.
Give us a sense of the credit quality that you're seeing out there in maybe some of the more leveraged loan space or the high yield space where we probably would see some concerns first.
The overall level of credit quality, it's poor, and there's many different ways that you can sort of view that or understand that. So maybe the simplest way is just to recognize that in the high yield space, naturally, the lending traditionally is done with covenants, right? That when you lend money to a levered enterprise, you attempt to tie the hands of management so that it can't take the money that you lent them and do things that you don't want them to do as a bondholder. Your relationship with the company as a bondholder is contractual. And if you don't specify in the contract that you, management, can't take the money I gave you, buy back stock, pay yourself dividends, sell my collateral, which is to say a division of the business and pay yourself, well, then you don't really have the ability to restrict them. So according to Moody's, covenant quality is as bad as it has been in a very long period of time. If you look at the amount of leverage that's gone into that marketplace, measured by debt to earnings ratios, it's quite high. And then if you look at things that are not so easily measured but more disturbing, it's things like the ad backs that we're seeing, the EBITDA ad backs.
Tad Ravel, thank you so much for joining us with some interesting comments on the credit side. Chief Investment Officer of Fixed Income for TCW, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio, giving us some thoughts about perhaps a liquidity crisis building in certain parts of the fixed income market. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. to Nathan Hager for an impeachment hearing update. Nathan.
The hearings are moving into the next phase, Paul, with the House Judiciary Committee opening its first public proceeding. Chairman Jerry Nadler says the facts before his panel are undisputed and that they must move swiftly. The committee members are hearing from 4 legal experts, or they'll be discussing the constitutional requirements for impeachment. 3 of them called by the Democrats, including Harvard law professor and Bloomberg opinion columnist Noah Feldman, Pamela Karlan of Stanford, Michael Gerhardt of the University of North Carolina. In his opening statement, Feldman will say President Trump abused his office by asking Ukraine's president to announce investigations of political rivals. The Republican expert will say it's the thinnest evidentiary record ever used to impeach a president. We have a live report coming up in 15 minutes, and terminal customers can watch today's hearing at Live Go. I'm Nathan Hager. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks are higher on the latest trade headlines. The U.S. and China are moving closer to agreeing on the amount of tariffs that would be rolled back in a Phase 1 trade deal. Negotiators expect an accord to be completed before American tariffs are set to rise on December 15th. A leadership change at one of the world's biggest tech companies. The founders of Google, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, are stepping down from Alphabet and handing the reins to Google CEO Sundar Pichai. He will now oversee a vast array of expensive endeavors. Billionaire investor Carl Icahn is pushing HP to move ahead with the takeover talks with Xerox. Icahn said that a tie-up between the two companies could lead to more than $2 billion in synergies. And Chipotle is one of the best stocks in the S&P 500 this year as it rebounds from its food safety crisis. Same-store sales have accelerated each quarter for a year. The company has been boosted by a push into delivery and a focus on fundamentals such as digital ordering. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscription.
This winter, there's no place like Wicked, the award-winning West End musical. Discover the incredible untold story of the Witches of Oz and how one came to be called good and the other wicked. Wicked at London's Apollo Victoria Theatre. Extra shows added for Christmas.
When it comes to music, I've heard it all. Pink Floyd, Sean Paul, Slipknot. But in the Witch Test Lab, hearing isn't enough. When we test headphones, we really listen. Not just to the music, but to the stuff that gets in the way. The traffic, the chatter, all that. Mind the gap. We simulate the loudest commute to find you the headphones that cancel out the noise. So you know we're only recommending the best.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
At TUI, we can help you find the perfect getaway for two. We fly to over 70 destinations worldwide, so wherever you have in mind, we'll help you get there. Book now and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. Book online or in store with one of our travel experts. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Offer available on selected holidays for a limited time and subject to availability. Booking T's and C's apply. At or protected.
This week at Tesco, buy 2 items from our chilled party food range, like tempura prawns or mozzarella sticks, and get a third one free. So for every 2 people you invite, you can ask another for free. But who? Linda from Accounts or Julio from Magaluf 2010. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Cheapest item free, selected stores while stocks last, ends 1st of January.
As the impeachment inquiry moves on to the next level, the House Judiciary Committee is holding its first hearings to decide whether to draft 4 more articles of impeachment.
Impeachment inquiry into Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States. Trump did not give an expletive about Ukraine.
Listen today to hear an expert panel discuss the grounds for presidential impeachment and whether President Trump's actions in the Ukraine scandal are in fact impeachable. Search Impeachment News on TuneIn to listen.
It's College Football Conference Championship Weekend, and TuneIn is your home to hear all the champions crowned. This Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, it's the SEC Championship. The undefeated LSU Tigers, led by the Heisman frontrunner quarterback Joe Burrow, look to cap their perfect regular season. However, it won't be easy as their opponent, the Georgia Bulldogs, will be hungry to pull off the upset and earn their ticket to the college football playoff. Catch all the action on TuneIn. Search college football to find your game.
To LeBron, slam dunk! The NBA is on TuneIn Premium. Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers are in Milwaukee to take on Giannis and the Bucks.
Hard pulls back, trying to make it 11-2.
Kawhi Leonard is all over the place. This Friday, the LA Clippers are at the Milwaukee Bucks. Tip-off is at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
So strong market right now in energy. Let's go to Greg Jarrett now for that Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
I am here. Stocks are up, bonds are down on speculation the U.S. and China will reach a deal that avoids tariffs due to take hold in 11 days. Larry Calpasina, RBC Capital, tells Bloomberg it's really hard to keep up with these trade headlines.
A good resolution has clearly been baked into the market. There's not a lot of upside risk here if we get a deal, but there does seem downside risk if we don't get one. The other thing we've been trying to focus investors on is if phase one is supposed to be the easy stuff, and frankly we're having a hard time, it seems like, getting across the finish line on the easy stuff, is there anything really coming in this phase one deal that's going to restore business confidence?
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.6%, up 20. Dow's up 0.6%, up 174. And the Nasdaq's up 0.5%, up 46. The 10-year is down 15.30 seconds with a yield of 1.76%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 3.6% at 58.13 a barrel, while COMEX gold's down 0.5% at 14.7760 an ounce. The dollar yen 108.86. The euro's $1.10.88, and the British pound $1.31.03. Gauge of U.S. service industries fell more than forecast in November as business activity cooled, though gains in employment and new orders suggest the biggest part of the economy is holding up in the fourth quarter. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Informed perspectives and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's 10:33 on Wall Street. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined by Ellen Wald, president of Transversal Consulting and a Bloomberg Opinion contributor, joining us now from Vienna at the OPEC meeting. Ellen, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate you making the effort all the way from Vienna. So you're at the OPEC meeting. Give us a sense of what is going on there right now.
Well, right now, we're still waiting for, for all of the ministers to arrive. Some of them, I think, are not even supposed to arrive until early tomorrow morning. But there's a lot of chatter about potentially putting together some sort of production cut. We've definitely heard Iraq talking about that. The thing is that putting that together is going to be a really hard sell at this point. Tomorrow morning, we're going to have the Joint Ministerial Monitoring Committee, and then finally in the afternoon, the actual OPEC meeting itself. So there is time to potentially put together some sort of deeper production cut. I think the ministers are particularly concerned about demand weakness in the first half of 2020 and the fact that right now the cuts are extended through March, but they want to at least get a rollover through June. I think we might even see one through the end of 2020, though.
Interestingly, I'm sure you're aware, we have real strong performance here in Brent crude, up about 3.4% today. What is your sense, Ellen, about the cohesion of OPEC these days? How efficient are they at really kind of managing the market?
Well, this is a really difficult situation because, like we saw a couple of days ago on Friday after Thanksgiving, crude just plummeted, and now today we're seeing it up. This really, I think, is due much more to the headlines coming out about the China trade negotiations, much more so than any chatter from OPEC. I think that OPEC is really in this market and this atmosphere where things are really being determined by the global economic outlook and demand. It's not really so much about supply. And so OPEC may have had a very presciently timed headline in terms of talking about putting together further cuts, but I do think most people realize that those cuts are very unlikely to materialize, and the price action we're seeing could be largely due to the talk on China.
Exactly. So when I think about OPEC, we also have to talk about Russia. How is Russia performing and acting in the marketplace right now? And what's kind of the relationship between Russia and OPEC right now?
Yeah, Russia is essentially the deal maker for OPEC at this point. In fact, last year in December, OPEC itself could not come to any sort of consensus, even to just extend what they already had in place, until Russia showed up the next day, sat down with the Saudis, sat down with the Iranians, and only then did we get a rollover in the status quo. So Russia really plays a crucial role at this point, particularly since the previous Saudi oil minister who put together this current deal, Al-Faleh, is no longer part of the Saudi government anymore. And we have this new Saudi oil minister who, while has played a very large role in the Saudi delegation, has never really sat at the head before. So people are really looking to see what kind of force he's going to bring to the negotiations. I think the big meeting we're looking for at OPEC is going to be the meeting between Russian oil minister Novak and the new Saudi oil minister Prince Abdulaziz ibn Salman.
So, Ellen, let's switch gears just a little bit and talk about the other big news in the energy world, and that is the Aramco IPO. There's news reports out that Saudi Aramco is considering pricing its IPO at the top end of the marketed range. What's the latest from your perspective on this huge IPO?
Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that they want to price it at the large end or at the higher end. We're supposed to get word on pricing at the same time as the OPEC meeting, which should be interesting. Though shares, we don't know when shares are scheduled to start trading. What's been going on with this IPO is we've seen pretty strong demand within Saudi Arabia, but not as strong as it was billed as. And typically, a lot of IPOs are oversubscribed many more times
than what we've seen so far with the Aramco IPO. But there's an interesting dynamic here between what's going to happen with OPEC and this IPO. I think there's a general assumption that you want a higher price for oil for the Aramco IPO. It's really not likely that Saudi Arabia is able to push through or to galvanize enough support to cut production enough to really increase the price of oil right now, particularly since it's reacting so much more to China trade than anything in OPEC. So I do think that what we have to understand is from here on out, once Aramco is a public company, Aramco will want to show revenue growth. And the best way, at least in this oil market, to show revenue growth is to pump more. And so every time OPEC comes up, there'll be an incentive for Saudi Arabia to pump more oil as opposed to less. And this could become an issue, particularly when Saudi Arabia wants to sell more shares of Aramco, as it has indicated it wants to. And this could really shift the OPEC dynamic in a very new way that we haven't seen thus far.
Ellen, just really quickly, 20 seconds. How concerned are people there at OPEC that this deal is only being done, it's not being done in the West? There's no U.S. or Western investors.
Well, I think a lot of people have kind of said, this is a Saudi thing. It's a Saudi or it's a regional story. That's really this is now a regional rather than an international story. Though I do think it will continue to affect the market and will have major effects on the Saudi economy and the regional economy going forward.
Dr. Ellen Wald, thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Wald is the president of Transversal Consulting, also a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Global Energy Center and a Bloomberg Opinion columnist. You can read more on this and other stories from Bloomberg Opinion at bloomberg.com/opinion. And for the folks on the terminal, you can type in OPIN GO to get all of the great opinion work coming out of Bloomberg Opinion. Again, looking at crude, a very, very strong day for crude here. Up about 3.5%, looking at Brent and WTI. And as Dr. Wald mentioned, probably driven more by positive tone of trade talks than about more so than what's happening in Vienna at the OPEC meetings. But we will follow up on those meetings. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Paul, the next phase of the Trump impeachment procedure is underway with the House Judiciary Committee holding a seminar with 4 law school faculty on the history and standards for impeaching a president. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman is on Capitol Hill covering the hearing and joins us live. Irv.
Nathan, the Intelligence Committee sent over the report outlining the president's conduct as recounted in 2 weeks of testimony by foreign policy officials, with a report from the Republican minority defending the president. The hearing was opened by Chairman Jerry Nadler.
But never before in the history of the Republic have we been forced to consider the conduct of a president who appears to have solicited personal political favors from a foreign government.
Ranking Republican Doug Collins.
There's not anything that presents an impeachment here except a president carrying out his job in the way the Constitution saw that he sees fit to do it.
The Republicans started off by raising procedural objections. The law professors are just now getting started with their statements. Nathan?
All right, Bloomberg's Irv Chapman with us from Capitol Hill. President Trump is wrapping up 2 days of meetings at the NATO summit in London with lunch for a select group of allies.
These are 8 countries plus us, plus the United States, that are fully paid. They met the goal of 2%. We call them the 2%ers.
The group notably did not include Canada or Germany. During a bilateral meeting with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, the president called Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau two-faced for appearing to make fun of him in a video. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, and a quick take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nathan Hager. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
This winter, there's no place like Wicked, the award-winning West End musical. Discover the incredible untold story of the Witches of Oz and how one came to be called good and the other wicked. Wicked at London's Apollo Victoria Theatre. Extra shows added for Christmas.
Get your home ready for Christmas. At littlewoods.com, you can order selected sofas, beds, and dining room furniture now and get them delivered in time for Christmas. Perfect for welcoming all of your guests. All with inclusive delivery and free returns. Own Christmas. Shop now at littlewoods.com. Order by 19th of December.
When it comes to music, I've heard it all. Pink Floyd, Sean Paul, Slipknot. But in the Witch Test Lab, hearing isn't enough. When we test headphones, we really listen. Not just to the music, but to the stuff that gets in the way. The traffic, the chatter, all that. Mind the gap. We simulate the loudest commute to find you the headphones that cancel out the noise. So you know we're only recommending the best.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Some people get very excited by Christmas shopping, and they've probably done all theirs already back in July. But if the thought of Christmas shopping gives you sweaty palms, tell yourself, I'm not a shopper, I'm a gifter. Then as a gifter, the possibilities are endless with TK Maxx. Give more adventurously with TK Maxx's range of whoa gifts at whoa prices. With big brand bargains across apparel, home, jewellery, kids' toys and more. In-store and at tkmaxx.com. Gift different with TK Maxx.
At TUI, we can help you find the perfect family holiday. And with flights from 20 UK airports, we make getting there a whole lot easier. Book now with thousands of free kids' places, plus spread the cost and pay £0 deposit when you choose direct debit. Book online or in-store with one of our travel experts. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's and put you in the middle. Offer available on selected holidays for a limited time and subject to limited availability. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
As the impeachment inquiry moves on to the next level, the House Judiciary Committee is holding its first hearings to decide whether to draft formal articles of impeachment.
Impeachment inquiry into Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States. Trump did not give an expletive about Ukraine.
Listen today to hear an expert panel discuss the grounds for presidential impeachment and whether President Trump's actions in the Ukraine scandal are in fact impeachable. Search Impeachment News on TuneIn to listen.
Don't want to miss a second of your NFL team's next matchup? Let TuneIn remind you. Just make sure notifications are enabled on your phone and search for your team profile on the TuneIn app. Then, find the game you want under Events and tap Notify Me. We'll send you an alert as soon as live coverage begins.
In the stock market and in life, everything can change from 1 minute to the next. Be the first to hear the latest money news and market trends with CNBC on TuneIn. Wherever your day takes you, listen to CNBC's full slate of programming, including shows like Fast Money, Squawk Box, and Mad Money with Jim Cramer. And when the next big business story breaks,
CNBC lets you know with live updates and commentary. At the office, at home, or on the go. Search CNBC on TuneIn to listen.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, as we know, President Trump is in London this week for the NATO meetings, the 70th anniversary of NATO. Right now, President Trump is in a bilateral meeting with Giuseppe Conte, the Prime Minister for Italy. They're discussing trade, defense. President Trump also mentioned this morning that Macron has taken back his comments on NATO, and President Trump is also saying that he has seen the impeachment report and it is, quote, a joke. Right now, let's go to London. We'll pick up President Trump and his comments to the Associated
they're
to
going
the
to
press
lose their
there.
race because people are putting it. They went back to their districts and they are getting hammered by their districts. And if they don't, they're going to lose their race. So in many ways, I hope they don't. Okay, and we'll get a fair shake in the Senate, if assuming that whatever happens, we'll get a very fair shake in the Senate. And but we've already been given. You just take a look. Today, I understand. I've been with all of these world leaders and done conferences with the world leaders, so I haven't been able to watch. But think of it. They get 3 constitutional lawyers and we get 1. What's that all about? Just that little statement. They get 3, we get 1. We had no representation. We couldn't call witnesses. We couldn't do anything. It is the most unfair thing that anybody's ever seen. They would have done much better if they gave us equal representation because the public gets it. But just look at today. Now, I don't think too many people are going to watch because it's going to be boring. All right? In fact, you're here. I guess you're here. We'll supersede it, right? But not a lot of people are going to be watching today. But just think of this. Constitutional lawyers, they get 3 and we get 1. What kind of a deal is that? Now, you don't need a constitutional lawyer because there was nothing done wrong. 0 done wrong. And I say it, and I'll say it again. Read the transcript and then listen to what the president of Ukraine said. He said there was no pressure whatsoever. Listen to what the foreign minister of Ukraine, highly respected man, both of them, very respected. Listen to what the foreign minister said. And he said there was no pressure whatsoever. That's the only one that counts. But then listen to all of their witnesses, and not one of them said anything that was meaningful other than positive for me. Like the one said, there was no quid pro quo. That's what he said. And he said that I actually told him that. There will be no quid pro quo. I said that. And I said other things that were even stronger than that. And, you know, it's a disgrace that they are doing this. And they're doing it because they think they can't win in 2020. They're doing it because you take a look at their candidates, and their candidates are not doing too well. And they figure this is their only shot. And it's a disgrace because this process was not supposed to be used that way. Okay, any other questions?
Yes, Mr. President, why do you feel like there is a need for a separate 2%ers event?
Because the 2%ers, they're good friends of mine, they're countries, they paid their full amount. The 2% is 2% of their GDP. They paid their full amount, and I'm proud of them. And we had a total of 9. And when I first came here, we had virtually none. If you look at NATO today compared to NATO 3 years ago when I started, we built up NATO, and Stoltenberg will tell you it was because of Trump. Because I said, you got to pay. Other presidents came and they'd sit for 2 hours and they'd leave and that would be it. I said, no, you got to pay. And because of that, NATO's become strong again, much stronger. I think your president of Italy would tell you that, much stronger than it has ever been. And with that money, they're buying new equipment. I mean, these countries are going out and buying great airplanes and great everything. It's a good thing to have. Hopefully we never have to use it. And I don't think we will have to use it. But the stronger we get, the less likely it will be that we have to use. Thank you all very much. I'll see you back in Washington. Thank you. Thank you.
That was President Trump in London at the NATO meetings, bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister of Italy, Giuseppe Conte, talking about trade and defense. But of course, with the press, the questions went right to impeachment, as they typically do. So we were there in London listening to President Trump. Right now, let's talk about trade, because we're talking that continues to move the market here. We had some positive commentary on China trade today, pushing that market up higher. Let's talk to Global Trans Chairman and CEO Bob Farrell. Bob, thanks so much for joining us. Give us a sense for how the global transport industry, the folks that actually transport goods around the world, are dealing with the uncertainty on trade.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. We've seen Black Friday, Cyber Monday records. We're in the thick of the holiday peak, and most of the retailers and distributors that Global Trans deals with have been well ahead of this. They started the preparations back in Q1 of 2019. So a lot of the goods that they need in place to sell this holiday season, they've already been warehousing. You can see that in the swelled inventories that exist across the country. So I think they're well positioned. I think the real question is, when you look at in October, for example, in the Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach, there were over 120,000 fewer inbound containers. What is that going to mean for the goods that we're going to need in the beginning of 2020?
So the freight, Bob, you guys have a great view on the flow of freight around the world. Do you get a sense that, manufacturers, shippers are preparing for a perhaps slower growing 2020 versus maybe the last couple of years?
I think consumer confidence is still really high. I think there's a huge demand for goods. I think there's been a big pull forward of goods from China, which is giving certain manufacturers the opportunity to transition some of their manufacturing to other Southeastern Asian nations. Some are staying put in China. Some are changing the terms on their purchase orders. One tactic that we've seen is customers use to avoid surging costs is to change the terms on their purchase orders so they don't take ownership of the product until it hits the dock at their distribution center. So that's really putting the onus on the vendor to absorb the tariff cost. So I think we'll see some of the tariff impact in the prices we pay, but I don't necessarily see that that's going to reduce volume overall.
Interesting. So give us a sense of kind of which ports are seeing particular strength and maybe which are seeing some weaknesses. Are we still seeing good inbound traffic to the West Coast ports, for example?
Well, I think we're seeing, I guess it depends on what you consider to be good. It was down, as I said, significantly in October. I don't know what the November data looks like yet. I think what we've seen is, additional pull forward of shipments from Tijuana and San Diego. So we see stuff coming in other ways. We see companies like Global Trans and other third-party logistics providers surging their capacity wherever it's needed to bring that stuff forward.
So when I think about when the stuff gets to the shores, how are our rails and truckers? Are they handling the capacity? How are the overland transports here in the U.S. doing?
In 2019 compared to 2018, the capacity available across multiple modes of transportation is much more available than it had been in 2018. So right now, we're finding capacity easy to get. It's cheaper. And that, we believe, is going to continue into the first half of 2020.
Bob Farrell, thanks so much for joining us. Bob is the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Global Trans Enterprises based in Scottsdale, Arizona. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. to Nathan Hager for an impeachment hearing update. Nathan.
Yeah, Paul, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Gerald Nadler, has opened today's hearing, saying the facts are undisputed.
On July 25th, President Trump called President Zelensky of Ukraine, and in President Trump's words, asked him for a favor. That call was part of a concerted effort by the president and his men to solicit a personal advantage in the next election.
Ranking Republican Doug Collins says Democrats are pursuing impeachment just because they, quote, don't like the guy. We have a live report coming up in 15 minutes, and Bloomberg Terminal customers can watch the hearing before the House Judiciary Committee at Live Go. I'm Nathan Hager. This is Bloomberg.
There are plenty of parties over the festive period. They'll have food and drink, music too. Some will even have rides and fireworks. But one has all that, plus a big something extra. Big Game 12 is London's biggest rugby party. To watch Harlequins take on Leicester Tigers from just £17 a ticket for children and £27 for adults, go to tickets.quins.co.uk or search Big Game 12. Kick-off 4:30pm, Saturday 28th of December, Twickenham Stadium.
This winter, there's no place like Wicked, the award-winning West End musical. Discover the incredible untold story of the Witches of Oz and how one came to be called good and the other wicked. Wicked at London's Apollo Victoria Theatre. Extra shows added for Christmas.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like for reals. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
Great music gets people moving. So here's the perfect gift for someone who's always on the go. The highly portable, special edition Bose SoundLink Mini Bluetooth speaker. Now only $149 in the Black Tag gift event at Curry's PC World. Big sound, deep bass, and 6 months free Spotify for great music right through from the Christmas party to the beach party season. Make anyone's Christmas at Curry's PC World. T's and C's apply.
At Asda this Christmas, treat them to a gift or two, or 3, with 3 for 2 on a wide range of beauty and toiletry gift sets from Dove, Lynx, Bayliss and Harding and many more. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Individual prices £1 to £20, cheapest item free.
As the impeachment inquiry moves on to the next level, the House Judiciary Committee is holding its first hearings to decide whether to draft 4 more articles of impeachment.
Impeachment inquiry into Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States. Trump did not give an expletive about Ukraine.
Listen today to hear an expert panel discuss the grounds for presidential impeachment and whether President Trump's actions in the Ukraine scandal are in fact impeachable. Search Impeachment News on TuneIn to listen.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Is there any bank right now in the U.S. that you think is a buy?
Do you think Chairman Powell has lost the market?
Jeff Bezos is no dope. What's the big ka-ching?
The big question, I think, for investors is free cash flow.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
The U.S. tariffs actually hurt both China and the U.S.
Large strategics are looking to either buy or invest in innovation.
Soybeans and corn have been basically at or below the cost of production for about 4 or 5 years.
So what we see more bonds, more yield.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, we're going to take a look at Peloton. The company came out with an ad over the Thanksgiving holiday period, getting mixed reaction in the marketplace, actually hurting the stock over the last day or so. We'll take a look. Plus, we'll also take a look at Google or Alphabet, however you want to go. The founders stepping back for the company. We'll take a look. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Let me climb off my bike first, Paul. The S&P has halted a 3-day slide after Bloomberg News reported negotiators are getting near an agreement on the amount of tariff relief in a Phase 1 accord between the world's 2 largest economies. Now, the equity gauge, as you will well remember, slumped yesterday as the president downplayed the urgency of a deal. So what's good now? Where are you going to go? Savita Subramanian of Bank of America, head of U.S. Equity and Quantitative Strategy, tells Bloomberg stocks seem to be a better bet than bonds right now.
You know, the dividend yield of the S&P 500, 70% of stocks in the S&P offer a higher yield, higher income opportunity than your average bond. So I think that that's where stocks actually win out over fixed income.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio, and right now the S&P is up 0.8% of 23. The Dow's up 0.75% of 203, and the Nasdaq's up 0.7% of 57. The 10-year is down 15.30 seconds with a yield of 1.76%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up 4.2%. at $58.44 a barrel, while COMEX gold's down 0.4% at $14.78 even an ounce. The dollar yen, 108.81. The euros, $1.10.87, and the British pound, $1.31.07. Companies added the fewest workers to payrolls in 6 months, according to ADP, underscoring a trend of moderating hiring amid pullbacks in corporate investment. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. We return to Bloomberg Markets with you, Paul.
Yes. Greg Jarrett, thank you so much. I am here manning the fort. Lisa is off today. Bloomberg Markets is brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the 6th straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. A risk-on day today, much, much different than what we saw yesterday. Let's see if that extends to the small-cap universe. Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, what are you looking at?
Well, the short answer is, Paul, it does. The Russell 2000 index up about 0.75%, and the S&P 500 is also up about 0.75%. The Russell's biggest gain belongs to Protagonist Therapeutics, whose ticker is PTGX. The drug developer has risen almost 53%. CEO Dinesh Patel and 3 other insiders disclosed they bought shares yesterday when Protagonist fell 47% in response to study data. Kodiak Sciences, ticker KOD, has gained about 17.5%. A share sale by the drug developer raised $276 million, or 14% more than planned. The sale amounted to, coincidentally, a 14% stake. Solaris Oilfield Infrastructure, ticker SOI, has added about 11%. The oil services company set up a $25 million stock buyback plan and raised its dividend by 5%. Now, the Russell's steepest drop belongs to Barnes & Noble Education, ticker BNED. The textbook seller has fallen almost 20%. Fiscal second quarter earnings trailed analyst average estimate in the Bloomberg survey. Company also cut a profit forecast for the year. And Revance Therapeutics, ticker RVNC, has lost 17%. The drug developer is raising $110 million by selling shares at $17 each. Revance closed at $20.15 yesterday.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Well, Peloton, simple PTON on the terminal. They had an ad come out over the Thanksgiving holiday. They got, let's call it, mixed reactions, tepid reactions from the public and consumers. Actually hit the stock over the past couple of days. Let's get some details. Josh Feynman is an equity reporter for Bloomberg News, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. So, Josh, what was the ad and why is it getting so much backlash?
So the ad was a woman with a small child getting a Peloton for Christmas, and
from her husband
about a year ago, and she vlogged her performance over the year and was excited by it, but also seemed distressed. Had to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Sort of, it was her reaction was a little strange.
Right, and so what's the backlash actually on this now?
So I think there's backlash saying that it's a bit sexist since her husband potentially bought it for her to, I guess, lose weight or for some reason, and there's a lot of that going on. People are concerned about that, and that's the main issue people are having
now. The stock was down yesterday, but it was in a down market. Is there a sense that this backlash actually did hit the stock?
I think it did slightly, but it was in the market. And there was an analyst that came out, the only one I saw, Raymond James, basically defending the company, saying that this isn't going to impact their holiday sales. The holiday sales will probably be fine, and even they have a new advert in the UK that's doing very well, much better than other advertisements have done.
I know there was calls for perhaps the company to pull the ad. What have they said about that?
We reached out to them yesterday, and they haven't gotten back to us. We need to check again today, but I know the Raymond James analyst thought that they would pull the ad too, but I haven't seen it. I mean, I've actually seen the ad on channel today about 5 times. So
okay, so is there there's that old saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity. Do you think that might apply to this case?
I do. I don't think it's going to hurt them. I think it's free advertising for them, and as much as they might protest, I think it's good for them.
The stock is actually, I did trade down yesterday. I mean, it did IPO'd at 29. It's at 33 and change here. Stock's actually done pretty well relative since its IPO. What's the feeling about the company right now? Is it still considered a good story?
I think so. I mean, there was an analyst last week who raised the price target to 45, which was a street high, and I've seen more positive than maybe initially analysts came out. They seem to be excited for it. They have a treadmill, which I think maybe they might be lowering the price on, which might get some more people. And just as a user myself, I see, usership skyrocketing, honestly, on a sort of a daily basis.
So when you're on there, you can see like how many people are in your session, right? And are you seeing bigger numbers or big numbers?
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, maybe I think on Sunday I went on, and in the morning there was maybe 800 people in a ride I was doing or combined. By the end of the day, there was like 25,000.
Right.
So
I mean, the sense is, how important is, do we have any sense of how important the Christmas season is for this company, or do they sell these bikes all year round? Or is there a sense that, like a lot of retailers, Christmas is real important to them?
I mean, I think it is. I'm not totally sure. I mean, I seem to see the trucks delivering the Pelotons all year round. So, but I imagine it's a bigger season, especially because people are worried about their health for the new year, and that's always, be it Weight Watchers or any kind of weight management system, they always get a lot of sales in the new year.
For your best intention starting of the year.
Exactly.
Joshua Feynman, equity reporter for Bloomberg News, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio with an interesting story out on Peloton. Again, the ad dropping over the Thanksgiving holiday, getting some backlash in the marketplace, maybe contributed to some weakness in the stock yesterday. The stock's rebounding today. It's up about 0.8% to $33.73. Again, the IPO was at 29. So unlike some of the other IPOs of 2019, this one is actually above water here. So we'll have to see if it has any feedback or any fallout for the stock longer term. We'll monitor, see whether that commercial gets pulled or not. So, but doesn't seem to be a big issue today. Stock bouncing back here in a very, very strong market, as we've been noting all morning. The S&P up about 0.7%, as is the Dow. NASDAQ up about 0.6%. Getting some, that every day the rhetoric on trade. Today, you could argue that the rhetoric was a little bit positive. Ergo, we get a lift to the market. But that's the kind of volatility that investors had become accustomed to as we deal with this trade negotiations. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
All right, Paul, thanks. 4 law school professors are giving the House Judiciary Committee their views of impeachment as defined in the Constitution as the inquiry into President Trump heads into the next phase. Let's go live to Capitol Hill and check in once again with Bloomberg's Irv Chapman.
Nathan, the Democrats got support for their moves toward impeachment from their first witness, Professor Noah Feldman of Harvard Law School.
President Trump has committed impeachable high crimes and misdemeanors by corruptly abusing the office of the presidency.
Professor Pamela Karlan of Stanford University.
That when President Trump invited, indeed demanded foreign involvement in our upcoming election, he struck at the very heart of what makes this a republic to which we pledge allegiance.
The Republicans invited Jonathan Turley of George Washington University, who speaks shortly. His view is that the evidence is too thin to warrant impeachment. Nathan?
All right, Bloomberg's Irv Chapman on Capitol Hill. Meantime, President Trump is weighing in on the proceedings from the NATO Leaders Summit in London.
Just think of this. Constitutional lawyers, they get 3 and we get 1. What kind of a deal is that? Now, you don't need a constitutional lawyer because there was nothing done wrong. 0 done wrong.
Speaking during a bilateral meeting with Italy's prime minister, the president also said French leader Emmanuel Macron took back many of his criticisms of NATO. The French leader, though, stood by his calls for change, particularly when it comes to Turkey's role during his post-summit news conference. The Trump administration is moving forward on classifying Mexican drug cartels as terrorist organizations. Sources tell Bloomberg the president will meet with top advisors on Friday to discuss the matter. Global news on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Intellectual property, one of the most valuable things we market in Asia.
I understand you're trying to rival the likes of San Francisco, New York.
We have our own brand of intellectual property.
Let's focus first on this U.S.-China trade story.
Find out why it's so valuable.
Do you need to see substance in an agreement or just that they stop shouting at each other?
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, tonight at 6 Eastern, on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt US Kids, and the Ad Council.
At Lidl, we're big on getting in the Christmas spirit with our award-winning 8-year-old Queen Margot blended Scotch whisky for just $12.99 and our award-winning range of Hortus Artisan gins and gin liqueurs from only $9.99. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here, testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like for reals. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
At TUI, we can help you find the perfect getaway for two. We fly to over 70 destinations worldwide, so wherever you have in mind, we'll help you get there. Book now and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. Book online or in-store with one of our travel experts. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Offer available on selected holidays for a limited time and subject to availability. Booking T's and C's apply. At or protected.
If you're on the way home from work, why not go to Boots.com where you'll find thousands of fantastic gifts to choose from, like Philips to Champneys. If you order from Boots.com, you can collect from a Boots of your choice, such as Boots in London White City Shopping Centre. What better way to shop when it's lovely and sunny like today? So gift like you get them at the fantastical choice of thousands of gifts to order and collect boutique. Charges may apply. See Boots.com for details.
Your old car, your loyal friend, so many memories. It's impossible to leave their side.
Until now, get £5,000 off a selected brand new Citroën when you trade in your old car.
Alors, out with the old, in with the new. Hello Citroën, hello comfort.
The Citroën Swappage. Trade in your old car for a brand new Citroën, including the award-winning SUV range.
Citroën.
Discount on OTR price of selected Citroën, including C1. Registered by the 31st of December when trading in a qualifying vehicle. Not in conjunction with other offers. Search Citroën Swappage for full T's and C's. What's the sign of a really first-class funeral directors? Is it how they're with you every step of the way?
Is it the care they take looking after your loved one? The superb organisation they show on the day itself? The thoughtful little touches you maybe weren't expecting? Yes, it's all those things. But there's another sign you should also be looking for. The one that says Dignity. You'll find it's on every one of our branches and on the Dignity website. When you see it, you'll know you couldn't be in better hands. Dignity Funeral Directors, taking the greatest care.
As the impeachment inquiry moves on to the next level, the House Judiciary Committee is holding its first hearings to decide whether to draft formal articles of impeachment.
Impeachment inquiry into Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States. Trump did not give an expletive about Ukraine.
Listen today to hear an expert panel discuss the grounds for presidential impeachment and whether President Trump's actions in the Ukraine scandal are in fact impeachable. Search Impeachment News on TuneIn to listen.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are up on upbeat reports on U.S.-China trade talks, while expectations for a stronger OPEC agreement have boosted petroleum-linked shares. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.7%, up 20. Dow's up 0.7%, up 183, and the Nasdaq's up 0.6%, up 50. The 10-year is down 18.30 seconds, the yield 1.77%. West Texas Intermediate crude is having an up day, up 4.25% at 58.49 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 0.4% at 14.79 even an ounce. The dollar yen 108.80. The euro $1.10.90, and the British pound $1.31.11. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, we got some management changes coming to Alphabet or Google or Alphabet, however you want to play it. Joining us to break it down is Laura Martin, senior analyst for Needham & Company, joining us on the phone from Los Angeles. We also have Mark Bergen, technology reporter for Bloomberg News. He's in our Bloomberg 960 studio in San Francisco. Mark, let's start with you. Just lay out for us what actually is happening at Alphabet/Google today.
Sure. So officially, Google, Sundar Pichai, who's been running Google for the past 4 years as CEO, is now stepping up to be also the CEO of Alphabet, which was a role that Larry Page